When Noah Bennett pulled over on that forgotten October road, he thought he was saving a stranded bride in a wheelchair. He had no idea she was a billionaire testing whether anyone could love her without wanting her money. And she had no idea this struggling single father and his daughter would teach her what wealth never could, that real love doesn't come with a price tag. This is the story of a lie that broke two hearts and the truth that healed them both. Stay with me until the end and comment what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. The October sun hung low over the Montana backroads, painting everything in shades of amber and rust. Noah Bennett's pickup truck rattled along the gravel path, the bed loaded with firewood he'd spent the morning splitting. His flannel shirt was dark with sweat despite the autumn chill, and his hands, calloused from years of carpentry and hard living, gripped the steering wheel with the easy confidence of a man who knew these woods like the lines on his own palms. He was thinking about Mia. He was always thinking about Mia. His 9-year-old daughter would be getting off the school bus in about an hour, and he'd promised her pancakes for dinner. Not because it was a special occasion, but because it was Tuesday, and Tuesdays had been hard ever since Sarah died 3 years ago. Pancakes helped. They didn't fix anything, but they helped. Noah rounded a bend where the pines grew thick and the road narrowed to barely one lane, and that's when he saw her. At first, he thought his eyes were playing tricks on him. The image didn't make sense, didn't fit with the reality of this forgotten stretch of Montana wilderness, where the only traffic was usually deer and the occasional logging truck. A woman sat in the middle of the road, not standing, sitting, in a wheelchair, and she was wearing a wedding dress. The gown was torn at the hem, stained with mud, and what looked like grass stains, the once white fabric now a patchwork of dirt and damage. Her veil hung crooked from her hair, which had fallen loose from whatever style it had been in, dark waves tumbling over her shoulders. But it was her face that made Noah's foot hit the brake, pale as moonlight, eyes wide with something that looked like terror, or maybe shock, or maybe both. The truck skidded slightly on the gravel before coming to a complete stop about 20 feet from where she sat. For a moment, neither of them moved. Noah's mind raced through possibilities, each more unlikely than the last. A prank? Some kind of photo shoot gone wrong? A movie production that hadn't bothered to get permits? But there were no cameras, no crew, no other vehicles. Just this woman, alone, in the middle of nowhere, looking like she'd crawled out of someone's worst nightmare about wedding days gone wrong. He put the truck in park and climbed out slowly, hands visible, the way you'd approach a frightened animal. "Ma'am?" His voice carried across the 20 feet between them, rough from the wood smoke that had been his constant companion all morning. "Are you hurt?" She looked up at him, and he saw her properly for the first time. She was young, maybe late 20s, early 30s, with features that would have been striking if they weren't currently arranged in an expression of absolute devastation. Her eyes were hazel, he noticed, green and gold and brown all at once, and they were filled with tears that she seemed to be fighting desperately not to shed. Her voice cracked. She tried again. "I can't. My phone is dead. My chair. Something's wrong with the wheel. It won't." She gestured helplessly at the wheelchair, and Noah saw that one of the front wheels was bent at an unnatural angle, the kind of damage that suggested a hard fall or a collision with something solid. He moved closer, his boots crunching on the gravel. "What happened? Where's your—" He almost said husband, but caught himself. The presence of a wedding dress didn't guarantee a wedding had actually happened. "Where's your people?" Something flickered across her face. Pain, anger, shame. He couldn't tell which. "Gone," she said simply. "They're all gone." Noah had lived 32 years on this earth, and he'd learned that sometimes the only thing you could do for someone was to not ask questions they weren't ready to answer. He'd learned that lesson the hard way, in hospital rooms and funeral homes and in the awful silence of his house after Sarah's family had finally stopped calling to check on him. So instead of pressing, he just nodded and walked the rest of the way to her wheelchair, kneeling down to examine the damaged wheel. It was definitely broken. The axle bent, the wheel itself cracked. This wasn't something that could be fixed with duct tape and good intentions. "This isn't going to roll anywhere," he said, looking up at her. "Do you have someone I can call? Someone who can come get you?" "My phone is dead," she repeated, and this time her voice was barely a whisper. There's no one. Not anymore." The way she said it made Noah's chest tighten. He recognized that particular flavor of alone. It was the same one he'd tasted for months after Sarah's funeral, when everyone's casseroles had run out and their sympathy calls had dwindled, and he'd realized that being a widower with a 6-year-old daughter meant being fundamentally, terrifyingly alone in a way he'd never imagined possible. He made a decision. "Okay," he said, standing up and brushing gravel dust from his jeans. "My name's Noah Bennett. I live about 3 miles from here. I can take you there, let you charge your phone, call whoever you need to call, figure out what to do next." She stared at him like he'd just offered her the moon. You don't know me." "No, ma'am, I don't, but I know what it looks like when someone needs help, and you look like you need help." For a long moment, she just looked at him, those hazel eyes searching his face for something. Sincerity, maybe, or ulterior motives, or some sign that he was exactly the kind of person a woman alone in the woods should be afraid of. Whatever she was looking for, she must have found it, because finally she nodded. "Evelyn," she said quietly. "My name is Evelyn." "All right, Evelyn, let's get you out of the road before someone comes around that corner too fast and doesn't see you in time." He moved around behind her wheelchair and reached down to lift her, then paused. "Is it okay if can I carry you? I don't want to hurt you, or I can't walk," she said quickly, almost too quickly. "So yes, you'll have to carry me." Noah had carried plenty of things in his life. Lumber, furniture he was building, his daughter when she fell asleep watching movies on the couch. But there was something different about lifting another adult human being, something intimate and awkward and strangely vulnerable for both of them. Evelyn weighed almost nothing. That was his first thought as he slid one arm under her knees and the other behind her back, lifting her clear of the wheelchair. She was small, delicate, and despite the ruined wedding dress and the dirt smudged on her face, there was something refined about her, something that spoke of a life very different from his own. She stiffened when he lifted her, her arms coming up instinctively to wrap around his neck. He could feel her trembling, though whether from cold or fear or something else entirely, he couldn't say. "I've got you," he said, which seemed like an absurd thing to say to a complete stranger he was literally carrying away from the side of a road, but it was all he could think of. "Truck's right here." He carried her to the passenger side and managed to get the door open one-handed, settling her as gently as he could onto the bench seat. The wedding dress pooled around her like sea foam, layers of silk and tulle that probably cost more than his truck was worth. "The wheelchair," she said. "Should we? I'll throw it in the back. Might be able to fix that wheel, or at least get it good enough to use while you're figuring out your next step." He went back for the wheelchair, folding it with practiced efficiency. Sarah had a sister who used one after a car accident, and he'd gotten familiar with the mechanics during family gatherings, and hefted it into the truck bed alongside the firewood. When he climbed into the driver's seat, Evelyn was sitting very still, her hands folded in her lap, staring straight ahead through the windshield like she was trying to memorize the pattern of pine trees against the sky. Noah started the engine and eased the truck back onto the road, heading toward home. The cab was silent except for the rumble of the engine and the crunch of gravel under tires. He wanted to say something, to fill the awkward space between them, but he'd never been good at small talk. Sarah had been the talker in their marriage, the one who could strike up a conversation with anyone. Noah was better with his hands than his words. After about a mile, Evelyn spoke, her voice so quiet he almost didn't hear her over the engine. "Thank you." He glanced at her, then back at the road. "Nothing to thank me for. Anyone would have stopped." "No," she said, and there was something hard in her voice now, something bitter. "They wouldn't have." Noah didn't know what to say to that, so he said nothing. They drove in silence the rest of the way. The Bennett cabin sat at the end of a long driveway, surrounded by pine trees and the kind of quiet that city people always said they wanted until they actually experienced it. It was a modest place. Noah had built parts of it himself, adding a room here, a porch there, trying to make it feel like a home rather than just a house. The property had been in Sarah's family for generations, and when she died, it became his and Mia's, the only constant in a world that had shifted beneath their feet. Noah pulled up to the front of the house and killed the engine. Through the windshield, he could see the mess of tools on the porch. He'd been meaning to organize them for weeks, and the stack of lumber under a tarp that represented his next few furniture commissions. It wasn't much, but it was theirs. It's not fancy, he said, suddenly aware of how the cabin must look to someone wearing a wedding dress that probably cost more than he made in 6 months. But it's warm and dry, and the phone works. It's perfect, Evelyn said, and she sounded like she meant it. He came around to her side of the truck and lifted her again, this time carrying her up the 3 steps to the porch and shouldering open the front door. The interior of the cabin smelled like pine wood and the lavender oil Mia liked to put in the diffuser Sarah's mother had given them. It was clean, mostly. Noah had learned early on that a 9-year-old and a single dad could either have a spotless house or a sane household, not both. Living room straight ahead, he said, carrying her through the doorway. I'll put you on the couch, and then I'll get your wheelchair. The living room was small but comfortable, dominated by a stone fireplace that Noah had spent 3 months building the summer before Sarah got sick. A well-worn couch faced it, flanked by mismatched armchairs and a coffee table that bore the scars of countless homework sessions and craft projects. Photos lined the mantel, mostly of Mia at various ages, a few of Sarah, one of Noah's parents before they'd retired to Arizona. He settled Evelyn on the couch, arranging pillows behind her back the way he'd seen nurses do in the hospital. She winced slightly as she shifted position, and he noticed for the first time the bruises on her arms, deep purple marks that looked fresh. Did someone hurt you? The question came out harder than he'd intended, edged with something protective and angry. Evelyn looked down at the bruises, seeming surprised to see them there. No, I mean, yes, but not... It wasn't like that. I fell. When the chair tipped over, it's not... No one hit me, if that's what you're asking. Noah nodded, filing away the information but not quite believing it. In his experience, people who'd been hurt often defended the people who'd hurt them, at least at first, but pushing wouldn't help, so he let it go. I'll get the wheelchair and your phone charger, he said, and I'll make some coffee, or tea, if you prefer. Coffee would be amazing, she said, and for the first time since he'd found her, she smiled. It was a small smile, tentative, but it transformed her face from tragic to something softer, more human. Noah brought in the wheelchair and set it up near the couch, then dug through a drawer in the kitchen until he found a phone charger that looked like it would fit whatever model she had. He plugged it into an outlet near the couch and handed her the cable. Thank you, she said again, taking the charger with hands that were still trembling slightly. Her phone, he caught a glimpse of it as she pulled it from somewhere in the folds of her dress, looked expensive, the kind of sleek device that probably cost more than his monthly mortgage payment. While the coffee brewed, Noah stood in the kitchen and tried to make sense of what was happening. He'd found a woman in a wedding dress on a back road, brought her home, and now she was sitting on his couch like a ghost from someone else's life. It felt surreal, disconnected from the reality of his everyday existence of carpentry work and school pickup, and trying to raise a daughter who still cried sometimes at night for a mother who would never come back. The coffee maker beeped. He poured 2 cups, black for him, and he brought sugar and cream for her on a tray his mother-in-law had given them as a wedding present. The domesticity of it struck him as absurd. Here he was, serving coffee to a stranger in a torn wedding gown, as if this were somehow a normal Tuesday afternoon. When he returned to the living room, Evelyn had her phone on, staring at the screen with an expression he couldn't quite read. Not quite relief, not quite fear. Something in between. Messages, he asked, setting the tray on the coffee table. 17 missed calls, 32 texts, voicemails I haven't listened to yet. She locked the phone and set it down like it was something dangerous. I'm not ready to deal with any of that yet. Noah handed her a cup of coffee and settled into one of the armchairs, maintaining a respectful distance. Do you want to talk about what happened? She wrapped both hands around the mug, staring into it like it might contain answers. I don't know if I can. Not because it's too painful, but because saying it out loud will make it real, and I'm not sure I'm ready for it to be real yet. That's all right. You don't owe me explanations. You pulled over for a stranger and brought her into your home, Evelyn said, looking up at him. I think I owe you at least some explanation. Only if you want to give it. She took a sip of coffee, black, he noticed, ignoring the sugar and cream, and seemed to be gathering herself, preparing to tell a story she didn't want to tell. I was supposed to get married today, she said finally. Obviously, she gestured at the dress with a bitter little laugh. To a man named Marcus Rothschild, We'd been together for 2 years. He was charming, successful, said all the right things. Everyone approved, my family, my friends, my business associates. He was perfect on paper. Noah waited, sensing there was more. And then yesterday I told him I'd lost everything. My inheritance, my trust fund, my assets, all gone because of bad investments and worse decisions. It was a lie, but I wanted to know. I needed to know if he loved me, or if he loved what I could give him. She laughed again, sharp and hurt. Turns out it was definitely the latter. He left you? Worse. He laughed. He actually laughed, like it was the funniest thing he'd ever heard. And then he said, her voice cracked, and she had to stop, swallow, try again. He said I must think he was an idiot to marry someone with nothing to offer, that I was damaged goods now, and he wasn't running a charity. Noah felt anger rise in his chest, hot and sudden. He'd never met Marcus Rothschild, would probably never meet him, but in that moment he hated him with the kind of pure, uncomplicated hatred he usually reserved for people who hurt children or animals. So this morning I got in my wheelchair. I've been using one since a car accident 2 years ago, though I've been regaining some function, and I drove away from the venue. Just drove. I didn't have a plan. I just needed to be anywhere but there. She looked around the cabin, at the photos on the mantel, the worn furniture, the life Noah had built from the ruins of his own grief. And then the chair broke, and you found me, and here we are. Here we are, Noah echoed. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of her story settling between them. Outside, Noah could hear the wind picking up, rustling through the pines. It would rain soon. He could smell it in the air, that particular combination of ozone and earth that always preceded a Montana storm. My daughter will be home in about 20 minutes, Noah said, glancing at the clock on the wall. Mia, she's 9. Smart as hell, talks a mile a minute, and she's going to have about 1,000 questions when she sees you. Evelyn's eyes widened slightly. I should go. I should call someone. Get out of your hair before... Where are you going to go? Noah asked gently. You just said you drove away from your wedding. Do you have somewhere to stay? Someone who isn't going to make you explain everything right now? She looked down at her coffee, and he could see her considering, weighing options that probably all felt equally terrible. No, she admitted finally. Not really. Then stay, Noah said, surprising himself with the offer. At least for tonight. There's a guest room. It's small, but it's clean. We'll figure out the rest tomorrow. You don't know me, Evelyn said, echoing what she'd said on the road. I could be anyone. I could be dangerous. Noah smiled at that, a real smile that crinkled the corners of his eyes. Lady, you were stranded in a wheelchair in a wedding dress in the middle of nowhere. If you're dangerous, you're doing a really bad job of showing it. Despite everything, Evelyn laughed. A real laugh this time, not bitter or broken, just genuinely amused. Fair point. Besides, Noah said, standing up to refill his coffee, I'm a pretty good judge of character. Comes from years of working with clients who try to describe what they want for custom furniture when they don't actually know what they want. You learn to read people. And what do you read from me? He considered the question seriously, studying her. The expensive dress that was now ruined, the carefully maintained posture despite obvious exhaustion, the way she held herself like someone who was used to being in control but had suddenly lost all of it. I think you're someone who's been hurt badly by someone you trusted, he said slowly. I think you're tougher than you look right now, and I think you're probably not used to accepting help from strangers, which makes it hard for you to be sitting here letting me help you. Evelyn stared at him, something shifting in her expression. That's remarkably accurate. Like I said, good judge of character. The sound of a school bus rumbling down the road made them both look toward the door. Noah set down his coffee and stood. That'll be Mia. Fair warning, she's going to be very excited about this. She doesn't see new people very often out here. Should I? Is there a story I should tell her? About who I am? Noah paused, considering. How about we just stick with the truth, or as much of it as you're comfortable sharing? I don't like lying to my daughter unless it's about Santa Claus or the Tooth Fairy. Evelyn nodded, but he could see tension in her shoulders, the way she was bracing herself for whatever came next. The school bus's air brakes hissed, and Noah heard Mia's feet hit the gravel driveway, She always jumped from the bottom step rather than walking down properly, no matter how many times he told her to be careful. The front door burst open seconds later. "Dad! Dad, you won't believe what happened at school today. Connor Michaels brought a snake for show and tell, but it got loose, and Mrs. Henderson screamed and—" Mia stopped dead in her tracks, her backpack sliding off one shoulder, staring at Evelyn on the couch. For a moment, no one spoke. Mia was small for 9, with her mother's dark curls and Noah's gray eyes and a smattering of freckles across her nose. She wore jeans with dirt on the knees and a t-shirt featuring a cartoon dinosaur wearing sunglasses. She looked from Evelyn to Noah and back again, her mouth forming a perfect O of surprise. "Is that a princess?" she whispered. Noah bit back a laugh. "Mia, this is Evelyn. She had some trouble on the road, so she's going to stay with us for a little while. Evelyn, this is my daughter, Mia." Mia approached slowly, the way she approached the deer that sometimes came into their yard, carefully, like any sudden movement might make them bolt. "Are you okay?" she asked Evelyn, her voice full of a child's uncomplicated concern. "Your dress is all torn." "I'm okay now," Evelyn said, and Noah heard her voice soften, becoming gentler. "Your dad found me and helped me. He's very kind." "He's the best dad in the whole world," Mia said matter-of-factly, dropping her backpack on the floor. "Are you really a princess? You look like a princess. Or maybe a queen." "Are you a queen?" "Mia," Noah said, a gentle warning in his voice. But Evelyn was smiling, a real smile this time, not the careful, guarded one she'd given Noah. "No, not a princess or a queen. Just a person who had a very bad day who your dad was nice enough to help." "Why are you in a wheelchair? Did you hurt your legs?" "Mia," Noah said again, more firmly this time. "That's personal. We don't ask people about stuff like that." "It's okay," Evelyn said. "I was in a car accident a while ago. My legs don't work as well as they used to." It was impressive, Noah thought, how smoothly she'd delivered that lie. Because it was a lie, or at least not the whole truth. He'd felt her stiffen when he'd lifted her, the way muscles tense that shouldn't tense if they weren't working. But he didn't call her on it. Everyone had their secrets, their reasons for not telling the whole truth. God knew he had his own. "That's sad," Mia said seriously. "But I'm glad Dad found you. Are you hungry? Dad promised pancakes for dinner, and he makes the best pancakes ever. He puts chocolate chips in them sometimes." "I couldn't impose us," Evelyn started, but Mia was already shaking her head. "It's not imposing if we want you to stay. Right, Dad?" Noah looked at his daughter, at the excitement in her eyes, the way she was already planning, already including this stranger in their routine, and felt his chest tighten with love and fear in equal measure. Mia had been lonely since Sarah died. They both had. And here was someone new, someone different, bringing life and possibility into their quiet cabin. It was dangerous to get attached to someone who was clearly just passing through. But looking at Mia's hopeful face, Noah didn't have the heart to say no. "Right," he agreed. "Pancakes for 3. Tut-bam." Dinner was a chaotic, warm affair that Evelyn watched like she was observing a foreign ritual. Noah cooked, while Mia narrated her entire day in exhaustive detail. The snake incident, yes, but also the spelling test she'd aced, the game of kickball at recess where she'd finally gotten to play pitcher, the argument with her best friend Zoe about which was better, horses or dolphins. I said horses because they're real and you can actually ride them, but Zoe said dolphins are smarter, which is probably true, but you can't ride a dolphin, can you? Or can you? Dad, can you ride a dolphin? Noah navigated the conversation with practiced ease, flipping pancakes and pouring juice and fielding Mia's questions with patience that spoke of years of practice. He'd set up a TV tray next to the couch so Evelyn could eat without having to move, a consideration that touched her more than it probably should have. The pancakes were, as promised, excellent, fluffy and studded with chocolate chips, served with maple syrup and butter. Evelyn couldn't remember the last time she'd eaten something that wasn't carefully plated and presented by a private chef or served at a restaurant where the menu had no prices. This was better. This was real. "So what do you do?" Mia asked around a mouthful of pancake, ignoring Noah's gentle reminder about not talking with her mouth full. "Like, for a job?" Evelyn hesitated. What did she do? Managed investment portfolios? Sat on charity boards? Attended social functions where everyone smiled and no one actually liked each other? None of those things seemed like appropriate answers for a 9-year-old. I help run a company, she said finally. It's not very exciting. What about you? What do you want to be when you grow up? A veterinarian, Mia said immediately. Or maybe a paleontologist. Or both. Can you be both? I think you should be able to be both, because what if you find dinosaur bones but they're from a sick dinosaur and you need to know both things to figure it out? That's very logical, Evelyn said seriously. I think you should definitely do both. Mia beamed at her, and Evelyn felt something shift in her chest, something warm and unfamiliar, and a little bit terrifying. When was the last time someone had looked at her like that? Like she'd said exactly the right thing, with no ulterior motive, no social calculation, just genuine pleasure at being understood. After dinner, Mia insisted on showing Evelyn her room. You have to see my rock collection. It's really cool. I found this one geode that has purple crystals inside. And Noah lifted Evelyn, wheelchair and all, up the stairs to the second floor. The house was small enough that Evelyn could map it easily. 2 bedrooms upstairs, a bathroom between them, and what looked like a tiny office or storage room at the end of the hall. Mia's room was exactly what you'd expect from a 9-year-old. Messy but loved, with posters of animals on the walls, a shelf full of books, and a collection of rocks spread out on her desk like treasures. This is my favorite, Mia said, holding up a chunk of quartz that glittered in the evening light. I found it by the creek. Dad says it's probably millions of years old. Can you imagine being millions of years old? No, Evelyn said honestly. I can't. She listened as Mia explained the origin of each rock in her collection, and she felt that unfamiliar warmth grow stronger. No one had talked to her like this in years, without wanting something, without calculating angles, without wondering what she could do for them. Mia just wanted to share her rocks with someone who would listen. When Mia finally wound down, and this one I don't know what it is, but it's really smooth and Dad says I can look it up at the library next time we go. Noah appeared in the doorway. Bedtime soon, kiddo. You've got school tomorrow. But Dad! No buts. Say goodnight to Evelyn. Mia turned to Evelyn, suddenly shy. Will you still be here tomorrow? Evelyn looked at Noah, who gave a small, encouraging nod. I think so, she said. If that's okay with your dad. It's very okay! Mia threw her arms around Evelyn in an impulsive hug that made Evelyn freeze, not quite sure how to respond. When was the last time someone had hugged her without it being a social obligation? When was the last time a hug had felt real? Slowly, carefully, Evelyn brought her arms up and returned the hug, patting Mia's back with hands that felt clumsy and unpracticed at this kind of affection. Okay, you, Noah said gently, scooping Mia up and making her giggle. Teeth brushed, pajamas on, bed. I'll be back in 10 minutes to tuck you in. He carried Evelyn back downstairs. She was getting used to it now, the strange intimacy of being carried by this man she'd known for less than 4 hours, and settled her back on the couch. I should show you the guest room, he said. It's not much, but… Noah, Evelyn interrupted. Why are you doing this? Really? He paused, considering the question with the same careful thoughtfulness he seemed to bring to everything. Because 3 years ago, I was the one who needed help. After my wife died, people brought food, offered to watch Mia, helped with things I couldn't handle alone. I'm just paying that forward. Your wife, Evelyn said softly. I'm sorry. I didn't know. I should have… How could you know? It's okay. He sat down in the armchair, suddenly looking tired. Sarah had cancer, ovarian. By the time they found it, it was too late to do much beyond making her comfortable. She died when Mia was 6. That must have been impossibly hard. It was. It still is some days, but you figure out how to keep going. You have to, especially when you've got a kid depending on you. He looked toward the stairs where they could hear Mia singing to herself in the bathroom. She's the reason I get up every morning? Well, that and the mortgage. Evelyn laughed softly. The mortgage. Right. I forgot people have those. Noah raised an eyebrow. What do you have instead? She realized her mistake immediately, the casual reveal that she was someone for whom mortgages weren't a concern. I just meant, I've been renting. Mortgages are different. He didn't look convinced, but he let it slide. The guest room's at the bottom of the stairs. First door on your right. Bathroom's across the hall. I'll get you some towels and something to sleep in. Sarah's stuff is still in storage, but I've got some t-shirts that'll work. Thank you, Evelyn said, and she meant it with an intensity that surprised her. For all of this. For not asking too many questions. For just helping. That's what people do, Noah said simply. Or at least that's what they should do. He went to get the towels and clothes, and Evelyn sat alone in the living room, listening to the sounds of a house settling in for the night. Upstairs, water running. Mia's voice calling something to her dad, his deeper voice responding. The creak of floorboards, the soft thud of a door closing. This was what a home sounded like, she realized, not the echoing silence of her penthouse apartment, where every sound was swallowed by expensive acoustics and emptiness. Not the calculated perfection of the venues where she'd hosted charity galas and business dinners. This was real, messy and warm and alive, and she was lying to these people. The guilt hit her like a physical thing, sharp and painful. She hadn't meant for it to go this far. The wheelchair, the claim that she couldn't walk, it had started as protection, a way to make herself seem vulnerable and non-threatening after Marcus's cruelty had made her feel like she needed to test everyone, trust no one. But Noah and Mia didn't deserve to be tested. They were just good. Genuinely, uncomplicatedly good. And here she was, lying to them. Evelyn looked down at her legs, hidden under layers of silk and tulle. She could stand. She could walk. Her physical therapy had been going well for months. The wheelchair was more habit and safety than necessity now. But admitting that meant admitting everything else. Who she really was, why she'd really been on that road. The lies she'd told to test Marcus that had spiraled into this larger deception. She should leave. First thing tomorrow morning, she should call her assistant, have a car sent, disappear back into her real life, and let these kind strangers forget she'd ever existed. But when Noah came back with an armful of towels and one of his flannel shirts, smelling of laundry detergent and wood smoke, Evelyn found herself saying, "Thank you for letting me stay another night." "You're welcome to stay as long as you need," he said. "No pressure, no expectations. Just whatever you need to figure things out." He helped her to the guest room, a small space with a twin bed, a nightstand, and a window that looked out over the pine trees. The walls were bare except for one photo of Sarah, younger and laughing, holding a toddler Mia in her arms. "I can take that down if it's weird," Noah said, noticing where Evelyn was looking. "No," Evelyn said. "Leave it. She looks happy." She was. Even at the end, even when it hurt, she was happy. She had this way of finding joy in things, stupid things, like the way light came through the kitchen window in the morning, or Mia's terrible knock-knock jokes. She made everything better just by being in it. There was so much love in his voice, so much grief worn smooth by time but still present. Evelyn felt like an intruder in this moment, in this house full of memories of a woman who had been genuinely, selflessly loved. "You must miss her terribly," she said softly. "Every day. But I'm also grateful I got to have her at all, you know? Some people never find that kind of love. I found it and lost it, and that's still better than never having it at all." He helped her into the bed, arranging pillows with the same care he'd shown all evening, and left the wheelchair within reach. "Bathroom's across the hall. If you need anything, anything at all, my room's the one at the top of the stairs. Don't hesitate to wake me up." "Thank you," Evelyn said again, feeling like the words were inadequate for everything he'd done, everything he was offering. Noah paused at the door, one hand on the frame. "For what it's worth. Whoever that guy was who laughed at you, who left you when he thought you had nothing, he's an idiot. You deserve better than that." And then he was gone, closing the door softly behind him, leaving Evelyn alone with her thoughts and her guilt, and the photo of a woman who had been loved the way everyone should be loved, completely, truly, without conditions or calculations. Evelyn lay in the darkness, listening to the house settle around her. Above her, footsteps moved across the floor, Noah checking on Mia one last time before bed, probably. A door closed. Silence fell, broken only by the sound of wind in the pines and the distant hoot of an owl. She shouldn't stay. She knew that. Every hour she stayed was another hour of lying to people who deserved better. But she was so tired, tired of being tested, tired of testing others, tired of a life where every interaction was a transaction and every relationship a contract negotiated with lawyers and prenups and exit strategies. Just one more day, Evelyn told herself as she drifted toward sleep in a twin bed in a stranger's guest room, wearing a flannel shirt that smelled like someone else's life. Just one more day of pretending to be someone who needs help, someone who could be saved. Just one more day of feeling like maybe, possibly, she could be the kind of person who fit into a life like this. Small and warm and real. Just one more day, and then she'd leave. But even as she made that promise to herself, Evelyn knew she was lying. She'd been lying all day. What was one more lie? Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the window frame, and the first drops of rain began to fall on the roof of the Bennett cabin, where a billionaire heiress slept in a borrowed shirt and a widowed carpenter checked the locks one final time, and a 9-year-old girl dreamed of dinosaurs and dolphins and the princess in the torn dress who might still be there in the morning. None of them knew yet how this story would end. None of them knew what they were beginning. They only knew that for one night, at least, none of them had to be alone. And sometimes that was enough. Morning came too early, announced by pale sunlight filtering through unfamiliar curtains and the distant sound of someone moving around in the kitchen. Evelyn woke disoriented, her hand instinctively reaching for the silk sheets of her penthouse bedroom before her fingers found rough cotton instead. Memory returned in fragments. The road, the wheelchair, Noah's weathered hands lifting her like she weighed nothing, Mia's excited chatter about rocks and dinosaurs. She lay still for a moment, staring at the ceiling and listening to the sounds of the house waking up, a coffee maker gurgling, footsteps on creaky floorboards, the low rumble of Noah's voice followed by Mia's higher animated response. This was someone else's life, someone else's morning routine, and she was an intruder in it. Evelyn sat up slowly, her legs, her perfectly functional legs, hidden beneath the blanket. The guilt that had settled in her chest last night was still there, heavier now in the clarity of daylight. She needed to tell them the truth. She needed to leave. She needed to stop this before it went any further. But when she tried to imagine the conversation, tried to picture Noah's face when she admitted she'd been lying about the wheelchair, about everything, her courage failed her. Just one more day, she thought again. Just long enough to figure out what to say, how to explain without making it worse. A soft knock on the door made her jump. "Evelyn?" Noah's voice, careful and quiet. "You awake? I've got coffee if you want some." "I'm awake," she called back. "Coffee sounds perfect." The door opened and Noah appeared, carrying 2 mugs and looking like he'd been up for hours. His hair was damp from a shower and he wore clean jeans and a Henley shirt with the sleeves pushed up to his elbows. There was sawdust on his boots. "Mia's getting ready for school," he said, setting one of the mugs on the nightstand. "I made oatmeal, if you're hungry, or there's eggs, or both. I'm not great at cooking, but I can handle breakfast basics." "Oatmeal is fine, thank you." Evelyn took the coffee, wrapping her hands around the warmth of the ceramic. "You didn't have to. I mean, you've already done so much." "It's oatmeal, not a kidney transplant." He smiled, easy and genuine. "Besides, Mia's already talking about showing you her comic book collection after school. I think you made a friend." Something in Evelyn's chest twisted at that. The casual way he said it, like friendship was something simple and uncomplicated instead of the careful negotiation it had always been in her world. "She's a wonderful kid. You've done an amazing job with her." "I do my best. Some days that's enough, some days it isn't." He leaned against the doorframe, comfortable in his own space in a way that made Evelyn envious. "I've got to drive her to the bus stop in about 20 minutes. Will you be okay here alone for a bit? I'll only be gone 10 minutes or so." "Of course, I'll be fine." But after he left, after she heard Mia's excited goodbye and the truck rumbling down the driveway, Evelyn found herself alone in the silent house, and the weight of her deception became unbearable. She looked at the wheelchair beside the bed, looked at her legs under the blanket, and made a decision. Slowly, carefully, Evelyn swung her legs over the side of the bed. Her feet touched the cool wooden floor. She took a breath, gripped the edge of the mattress, and stood. Her legs held her weight easily. No trembling, no weakness. The physical therapy had worked better than she'd let anyone know, better than she'd admitted even to herself. She'd been so focused on testing Marcus, on protecting herself, that she'd hidden her progress from everyone, her doctors, her family, even her own assistant. Evelyn took a step, then another. She walked to the window and looked out at the pine trees, at the world she'd stumbled into yesterday. From this angle, standing on her own 2 feet, everything looked different, less like a refuge and more like a lie she was telling to people who deserved better. She heard the truck before she saw it, the familiar rumble of the engine coming back up the driveway. Panic flooded through her. She couldn't let him see her standing, not yet, not before she figured out how to explain. Evelyn moved quickly back to the bed, lowering herself down and arranging the blanket just as she heard the front door open. Her heart was pounding, and she felt like a child caught doing something forbidden. "Evelyn?" Noah's voice from the living room. "You want that oatmeal now?" "Yes, please," she called back, hating how steady her voice sounded when everything inside her felt chaotic and wrong. He appeared minutes later with a bowl of oatmeal topped with brown sugar and what looked like fresh blueberries. Mia insisted on the blueberries, said princesses need proper breakfast. She really thinks I'm a princess? You showed up in a ball gown. What else is a 9-year-old supposed to think? He set the bowl on a tray across her lap with practiced efficiency. How'd you sleep? Better than I have in months, actually. That at least was true. Despite the unfamiliar bed and the guilt and the lies, she'd slept deeply, dreamlessly, in a way she hadn't managed in her 1,000 thread-count sheets. Noah settled into the chair in the corner. Apparently he'd brought it in from somewhere while she was sleeping. I've been thinking about your situation. Your phone's charged now, and you probably need to make some calls. Figure out what comes next. I know, I should. Evelyn pushed the oatmeal around with her spoon. It's just hard to know where to start. Start with what you know you need to do, not what you think you should do. There's a difference. She looked up at him, struck by the quiet wisdom in that statement. Is that from experience? Yeah. After Sarah died, everyone had opinions about what I should do. Sell the cabin and move closer to town. Put Mia in therapy. Start dating again after a reasonable amount of time. He shook his head. But what I needed to do was keep Mia's life as stable as possible and figure out how to be both parents for her. Everything else could wait. And did it work? Doing what you needed instead of what people thought you should? Most days. He smiled, but there was sadness in it. Some days I still don't know if I'm getting it right, but at least I'm getting it right for us, not for other people's expectations. Evelyn ate her oatmeal slowly, thinking about expectations. Her entire life had been built on them. Her father's expectations that she'd take over the family business, society's expectations about how a woman of her wealth should behave, Marcus's expectations that she'd be decorative and useful and wealthy enough to make him look good. When had she last done something just because she needed to, without weighing it against what everyone else would think? Noah, she said carefully, what if what you need to do is something people won't understand? Something that might hurt people you care about? He was quiet for a long moment, watching her with those steady gray eyes that seemed to see more than she wanted to show. Then you do it anyway, but you try to hurt them as little as possible, and you tell the truth, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. The truth. Right. The thing she'd been avoiding since he'd found her on that road. I need to tell you something, Evelyn started, but the words stuck in her throat. How did you confess to someone who'd shown you nothing but kindness that you'd been lying to them from the beginning? Before she could force the words out, Noah's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and grimaced. I'm sorry, I have to take this. It's a client. I'm building them a dining table and they keep changing their mind about the wood stain. He stood, already moving toward the door. We can talk more when I'm done. Of course. And just like that, her moment of courage passed. Evelyn finished her oatmeal alone, listening to Noah's patient voice from the other room explaining the difference between walnut and cherry finishes to someone who clearly had no idea what they actually wanted. The morning stretched into afternoon. Noah had work to do in his shop, the converted garage where he built furniture, and Evelyn found herself alone with her thoughts and her phone, which she'd been avoiding like it might explode. She finally forced herself to look at it. The texts were mostly from her assistant, Patricia, escalating from concerned to frantic. The voicemails were worse. Her father's angry demands to know where she was, business partners worried about missed meetings, and one message from Marcus that she deleted without listening to. She should call Patricia, should let someone know she was safe. But the moment she made contact with her old life, this interlude, this strange, unexpected pause, would be over. She'd have to go back to being Evelyn Grace, billionaire heiress, instead of just Evelyn, the woman Noah had helped. A text came through as she was staring at the screen. Patricia, if I don't hear from you in the next hour, I'm calling the police. I don't care if you're mad about the wedding. People are worried. Evelyn typed back quickly. I'm safe. Needed some time alone. Don't call police. We'll explain soon. The response was immediate. Thank God, your father is losing his mind. Where are you? Somewhere quiet. I'll call you tomorrow. She turned off the phone before Patricia could respond, feeling like a coward and not caring. Tomorrow she'd deal with everything. Tomorrow she'd tell Noah the truth and leave and go back to her real life. Today, she just wanted to pretend a little longer that she was someone else. The sound of power tools drifted in from the garage. A saw, maybe, or a sander. Evelyn wheeled herself to the living room window and looked out toward the converted garage where Noah worked. The door was open, and she could see him bent over a workbench, completely focused on whatever he was building. There was something beautiful about watching someone work at something they were good at, something they loved. His movements were confident, precise, the movements of a craftsman who knew his materials. The morning sun caught the sawdust in the air, making it glitter like gold. Evelyn watched, transfixed, as Noah ran his hand along a piece of wood, checking for smoothness, then picked up another tool and went back to work. He looked peaceful, content, like this was exactly where he was supposed to be. When was the last time she'd felt like that? Like she was doing exactly what she was supposed to be doing, exactly where she was supposed to be? She couldn't remember. Hours passed. Noah came in for lunch, sandwiches that he made quickly, efficiently, eating while standing at the counter because he was in the middle of something and didn't want to lose his momentum. Evelyn ate at the kitchen table, not because she couldn't move to the counter, but because maintaining the wheelchair fiction was becoming second nature, and that scared her more than anything. You're building something big, she observed, watching him wolf down his sandwich. Dining table for a family in town. 8-seater, oak with a live edge. They want it to look rustic but refined, which is harder than it sounds. He grinned. Refined is easy. Rustic is easy. Both at the same time means every cut matters. How long have you been doing this, building furniture? Professionally? About 5 years. Sarah and I used to refinish thrift store furniture as a hobby, and after she died, I needed something to do with my hands that wasn't punching walls. Turns out, I'm pretty good at it. He finished his sandwich and washed his hands. You want to see? The shop, I mean, if you're bored. Evelyn should have said no. Should have maintained distance, kept the boundaries clear. Instead, she said, I'd love to. Noah lifted her. She was getting too comfortable with this, with his arms around her, with the casual strength of him, and carried her out to the garage. It smelled like wood and varnish and sawdust, a smell that was becoming associated in her mind with safety and stability. The garage had been completely transformed into a workshop. Tools hung on pegboards with the kind of organization that spoke of a mind that needed order. Half-finished projects occupied various workbenches, a rocking chair missing its rockers, a bookshelf waiting for stain, and in the center of the space, the dining table Noah had mentioned. He set her down carefully, positioning the wheelchair so she could see the table properly. It's not finished yet, still needs sanding and stain and about 3 coats of polyurethane, but you can see the bones of it. Evelyn reached out and ran her fingers along the edge of the table. The wood was smooth but alive somehow, the grain telling a story of seasons and growth and time. It's beautiful. Oak is forgiving. It's strong but takes detail well. Noah moved to the other side of the table, pointing out joinery she wouldn't have noticed otherwise. See these joints? Mortise and tenon, no screws. They'll hold for generations if they're done right. You really love this, Evelyn said, watching his face as he talked about wood grain and joinery techniques with more passion than she'd heard anyone discuss anything in years. I do. It's honest work, you know. You put in the effort, you get results. You cut a corner, the piece falls apart. There's something satisfying about that kind of direct cause and effect. He looked up at her. What about you? Do you love what you do? Running a company, you said. Evelyn hesitated. The truth was complicated. She'd inherited a company she hadn't asked for, spent years learning to run it competently, and had never quite figured out if she loved it or just felt obligated to it. It's complicated. That's not a no, but it's not a yes either. No, it's not. She looked at the table, at the evidence of work done with care and attention. I think I'm good at what I do, but I'm not sure I love it. Maybe I never did. Maybe I just learned to be good at it because that's what was expected. Noah came around the table and leaned against the workbench beside her, arms crossed. That's a hard way to live, doing what you're supposed to instead of what you want, says the man who became both parents to his daughter because that's what he was supposed to do. That's different. I wanted to be there for Mia. The circumstances were awful, but the choice was easy. He was quiet for a moment. But yeah, I see your point. Sometimes what we're supposed to do and what we want to do line up, and sometimes they don't, and that's when life gets complicated. Very complicated, Evelyn agreed softly. They stayed in the shop for another hour. Noah worked while Evelyn watched, and they talked about small things. Mia's obsession with rocks, the deer that came through the property, the winter that was coming and how harsh Montana winters could be. Safe topics, easy topics. Nothing about who Evelyn really was or why she was really there, or the lies that were piling up between them like cordwood. When the school bus rumbled past, Noah checked his watch. That's my cue. Mia will be home in 5 minutes, and if I'm not there to hear about her day immediately, she holds it against me for hours. He carried Evelyn back to the house, settling her on the couch just as they heard Mia's feet hit the gravel driveway. The front door burst open. Dad, Evelyn, you won't believe— Oh, good, you're both here. Mia dropped her backpack and launched into a detailed explanation of the science experiment they'd done in class, involving vinegar and baking soda and a volcano that had erupted all over Connor Michael's desk, which was funny because he was the one with the snake yesterday, and maybe this was karma. Evelyn found herself laughing, really laughing, at Mia's animated retelling. The kid had timing, pausing for effect in all the right places, her hands gesturing wildly to illustrate the explosion of fake lava. And Mrs. Henderson said, wait for it, she said, Connor, perhaps you should pursue a career that doesn't involve animals or volcanoes. Mia collapsed in giggles. Everyone laughed so hard that Timothy snorted milk out of his nose. That's disgusting, Noah said, but he was smiling. It was hilarious, Mia corrected. She turned to Evelyn. Did you have a good day? Did Dad show you his workshop? He makes the most beautiful stuff. One time he made me a dollhouse that was so perfect I didn't want to play with it because I might mess it up. I saw the workshop. Your dad is very talented. The most talented, Mia agreed loyally. Then, with the sudden subject change that was apparently her specialty, do you like hot chocolate? Because Dad makes really good hot chocolate, and it's supposed to rain tonight, and hot chocolate is the best thing when it rains. I do like hot chocolate. Dad, Mia called over her shoulder, already heading to the kitchen. Make hot chocolate, the fancy kind with the little marshmallows. Noah gave Evelyn an apologetic look. She's very persistent. She's wonderful, Evelyn said, and meant it with her whole heart. The afternoon dissolved into the kind of domestic comfort that Evelyn had seen in movies but never experienced. Noah made hot chocolate, the fancy kind with real cocoa and vanilla and tiny marshmallows that Mia insisted on counting to make sure everyone got the same amount. They sat around the living room while rain started pattering against the windows, and Mia showed Evelyn her comic book collection, explaining the intricate plot of each one with serious dedication. This one is my favorite, Mia said, holding up a dog-eared issue of something featuring a girl with superpowers. Because she doesn't know she has powers at first, and then when she finds out, she has to decide if she wants to use them or just be normal. And I think that's hard, you know, because once you know you can do something special, can you really just pretend you can't? Evelyn stared at the comic book, at the girl on the cover who looked torn between two worlds. No, she said slowly. I don't think you can. Once you know, you can't unknow it. Exactly. Mia was pleased to be understood. So she has to be brave and use her powers even though it's scary and people might not like her anymore. That is brave, Evelyn agreed, feeling like the conversation had veered into territory that was hitting too close to home. Dinner was spaghetti. Noah apologized for the simplicity, but Mia declared it was her favorite meal in the whole world, so Evelyn assured him it was perfect. And it was perfect, in its own way. The sauce was from a jar and the garlic bread was frozen, but they ate together at the kitchen table with Mia chattering between bites, and Noah occasionally interjecting with gentle corrections about talking with her mouth full. This was what family felt like, Evelyn realized. Not the formal dinners of her childhood, where conversation was carefully moderated and every topic had to be appropriate for business discussion. Not the restaurant dates with Marcus, where they performed being a couple for whoever might be watching. This messy, warm, real thing where a 9-year-old talked about volcanoes and comics and nobody was trying to impress anyone. After dinner, Mia insisted on teaching Evelyn a card game that had incredibly complicated rules that seemed to change depending on who was winning. They played for an hour, and Evelyn laughed more than she had in months, maybe years. When bedtime came, Mia hugged Evelyn goodnight with the same unself-conscious affection she'd shown the night before. "I'm really glad you're here," she whispered. "It's nice having someone else in the house. It gets lonely sometimes, just me and Dad." Evelyn's throat tightened. "I'm glad I'm here too, sweetie." After Noah carried Mia upstairs for the bedtime routine, Evelyn sat alone in the living room, listening to the sound of rain on the roof and the murmur of voices from upstairs. Story time, probably. Noah reading to Mia the way her own father never had. She needed to leave. She'd known it this morning, and she knew it now even more certainly. Every hour she stayed, every smile she shared, every moment of this borrowed life she inhabited, it was all built on lies. And the longer she stayed, the worse the truth would hurt when it finally came out. But when Noah came back downstairs, settling into the armchair with a tired sigh, Evelyn found herself saying, "Thank you for today, for letting me be part of your life, even temporarily." "You say that like you're a burden. You're not." He looked at her seriously. Mia hasn't been this happy since before Sarah died, having someone new to talk to, someone who actually listens to her rock collections and comic book theories. It means something. "She means something to me too," Evelyn said, and it was the most honest thing she'd said in days. "Both of you do." Something shifted in the air between them. Noah leaned forward, elbows on his knees, and Evelyn was struck again by how present he was, how completely he existed in each moment without seeming to worry about the next one. Can I ask you something?" he said. "And you can tell me it's none of my business, but I'm going to ask anyway." "Okay. Are you running from something or toward something? Because I've done both and they feel different. Running from feels desperate. Running toward feels like hope." Evelyn considered the question carefully. "I don't know," she admitted. "Maybe both. I was definitely running from the wedding, from Marcus, from the person I was when I was with him. But I don't know what I'm running toward. I don't know if there's anything to run toward." "There's always something," Noah said quietly. "You just have to be brave enough to look for it." "Like the girl in Mia's comic book," he smiled. "Yeah, exactly like that. Once you know you can be something different, something more, you can't unknow it. You have to decide what you're going to do with that knowledge." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the rain providing a steady rhythm against the windows. Evelyn felt the weight of the day settling on her, the standing she'd done in secret, the lies she'd maintained, the growing affection she felt for these people who didn't really know her at all. "Noah," she started, then stopped. Tried again. "There are things about me you don't know, things that might change how you feel about having me here." He didn't look surprised. "I figured. Nobody ends up in a wedding dress in the middle of nowhere without a complicated story behind it. It's more complicated than you think. Then tell me. Or don't. Either way, you're still welcome here." He stood, stretching. "I'm going to head to bed. Got an early morning tomorrow. But Evelyn, whatever you're worried about, whatever you think is going to make me throw you out, I promise it's not as bad as you think." He was wrong about that. But Evelyn didn't correct him. She just said goodnight and watched him climb the stairs, and then sat alone in the dark living room, listening to the rain and trying to figure out how to be brave enough to tell the truth. Later, in the guest room, Evelyn stood again. This time she walked to the window and looked out at the rain-soaked darkness, at the pine trees bending in the wind. Her legs were strong, her body was capable, and she was lying to people who were showing her what real kindness looked like. She made it back to the bed just before Noah's footsteps creaked across the floor above her, checking on Mia one last time before settling in for the night. The house went quiet except for the rain. Evelyn lay in the darkness and made plans. Tomorrow she would tell Noah the truth about the wheelchair. Not all of it, not yet, but enough. She'd admit she'd been regaining function, that she'd let him believe she was more helpless than she was. And then she'd leave before she did any more damage to this family that had been kind enough to take her in. Tomorrow. She'd be brave tomorrow. But when tomorrow came, it brought complications she hadn't anticipated, and her careful plans dissolved like morning mist. The next day started normally enough. Noah made breakfast while Mia got ready for school, and Evelyn ate oatmeal and tried to gather her courage for the conversation she needed to have. But before she could say anything, Noah's phone rang. "Mr. Bennett, this is Emma Rodriguez from Woodland Elementary. We have a situation with Mia." Evelyn watched Noah's face go through several expressions: concern, fear, confusion. "Is she hurt? What happened?" "She's not hurt, but she's very upset. There was an incident with another student, and she's refusing to talk about it. Could you come to the school?" "I'll be right there." He hung up and looked at Evelyn apologetically. "I have to go," Evelyn said immediately. "I'll be fine here. Go take care of her." He left in a rush, and Evelyn was alone in the house for the first time since she'd arrived. She should have felt relieved, a chance to move freely, to stretch her legs, to be herself without the performance. Instead, she felt anxious, worried about Mia, worried about what could have upset a normally cheerful 9-year-old enough to require a parent pickup. An hour passed, then 2. Evelyn tried to distract herself with her phone, but the messages from her old life just made her feel worse. Patricia demanding to know when she was coming back. Her father's terse texts about responsibilities and obligations. Nothing from Marcus, which was somehow worse than if he'd tried to apologize. When Noah's truck finally pulled up, Evelyn wheeled herself to the window and watched him help Mia out. The girl's face was blotchy from crying, her usual bounce completely gone. They came inside quietly, and Noah gave Evelyn a look that said they'd talk later. "Mia, honey, why don't you go wash your face and change into comfortable clothes? I'll make you some lunch." Mia nodded silently and trudged upstairs. Noah waited until her door closed before sinking onto the couch with a heavy sigh. "What happened?" Evelyn asked gently. "Connor Michaels told everyone that Mia's mom died because she didn't have enough money for good doctors." Which is bullshit, obviously, but some of the other kids started asking questions, and Mia got upset and wouldn't tell the teacher what was wrong. His jaw was tight. Sarah had the best care possible. It just wasn't enough. Cancer doesn't care how much money you have. Evelyn's heart broke for him, for Mia, for the casual cruelty of children who didn't understand what their words could do. "I'm so sorry. It's not your fault." He rubbed his face with both hands. I thought we were past this. It's been 3 years. I thought the kids had stopped talking about it. Kids are cruel sometimes, even when they don't mean to be." "Yeah," Noah stood up. "I should make Mia something to eat. She didn't have lunch." "Let me help," Evelyn said without thinking. Noah looked at the wheelchair, then at her, clearly trying to figure out how she could help from a seated position. And Evelyn realized this was it. Her moment to either confess or dig the lie deeper. She chose confession. "Noah, I need to tell you something." She took a deep breath. "I can walk." He stared at her. "What?" "I can walk. I've been in physical therapy and I've regained most of my function. The wheelchair it was supposed to be temporary for when I got tired, but I've been using it as a crutch. Emotionally, I mean. And I let you think I was more disabled than I am because I was scared, and I didn't know how to tell you the truth once I'd already let you believe it." The silence stretched between them, heavy and uncomfortable. Noah's expression was unreadable. "Show me," he said finally. Evelyn's hands shook as she gripped the arms of the wheelchair and stood. Her legs held her easily, steadily. She took a step, then another. Noah watched without speaking. "I'm sorry," Evelyn said, her voice breaking. I'm so sorry. You've been carrying me everywhere, and I've been lying to you, and you've been nothing but kind, and I'm sorry." Noah ran a hand through his hair, looking away from her. When he finally spoke, his voice was carefully controlled. "Why?" "Because I was testing people," she admitted. "After Marcus left me when he thought I lost my money, I wanted to see if anyone would help me without knowing who I was or what I had. And then you stopped, and you were so kind, and I didn't know how to tell you without seeming like I was manipulating you, which I guess I was, and—" She was rambling now, words tumbling out. "I was going to tell you yesterday. I tried to tell you yesterday. But then Mia came home, and everything was so perfect, and I'm a coward." Noah was quiet for a long moment. Then he looked at her, really looked at her, and Evelyn saw something in his eyes she couldn't quite name. Hurt, maybe. Or disappointment. "You lied to my daughter," he said quietly. "You let her believe you needed help, let her worry about you, care about you, and the whole time it was a test. She doesn't deserve that." "I know. You're right. I'm sorry." "Stop apologizing and start explaining. Who are you really? Because I'm starting to think I don't know anything true about you." So Evelyn told him. All of it. The inheritance, the company, the penthouse, the way Marcus had laughed when she'd pretended to be poor, the desperate need to know if anyone could see her as just a person, not a bank account. The lies that had spiraled out of control until she was sitting in a stranger's cabin pretending to need help she didn't need. When she finished, Noah was staring at her like she was someone he'd never seen before, which she supposed she was. "So you're rich," he said flatly. "Like actually rich." "Yes." "And you've been pretending to be helpless to test whether regular people would be nice to you." "When you say it like that, it sounds terrible." "It is terrible," Noah said, and there was anger in his voice now, real anger. "Do you have any idea how condescending that is? How insulting? I carried you because I thought you needed help, not because I was auditioning for the role of Good Samaritan in some rich person's social experiment. That's not— I didn't mean— And Mia," he continued, his voice rising slightly, "Mia talked about you like you were special, like you were her friend, and the whole time you were lying to her. She's 9 years old. She's lost enough without having someone she trusted turn out to be fake." Each word hit like a physical blow. Evelyn had known the truth would hurt, but hearing it laid out like this, seeing the betrayal in Noah's eyes, was worse than she'd imagined. "I never meant to hurt her," Evelyn said, tears starting to fall. "Or you. I know that doesn't make it better, but it's true. Everything else was a lie, but that's true." Noah looked away, his jaw working. "I need to check on Mia. And I need you to figure out what you're doing next, because I don't think you can stay here." He climbed the stairs without looking back, and Evelyn was left standing in the living room, actually standing, no wheelchair, no pretense, feeling more alone than she had on that road 2 days ago. She could hear Noah's voice upstairs, quiet and soothing, talking to Mia. Could hear Mia's responses too soft for her to make out the words. The sounds of a father comforting his daughter, a family unit that she'd intruded on with her lies and her tests and her desperate need to be seen as something other than her bank account. Evelyn wiped her eyes and made a decision. She would leave. Today. Right now. She'd call Patricia, arrange for a car, disappear back into her real life, and let these good people forget she'd ever existed. It was the right thing to do, the only thing to do after what she'd done to them. She was gathering her ruined wedding dress from the guest room when she heard footsteps on the stairs. Noah appeared in the doorway. "Mia wants to talk to you," he said. His voice was neutral, giving nothing away. "Noah, I don't think that's a good idea. I should just go." "She wants to talk to you," he repeated. "And right now what Mia wants matters more than what either of us wants." He turned and walked back upstairs, leaving Evelyn with no choice but to follow. She climbed the stairs slowly, her first time doing so under her own power, and found Mia sitting on her bed, surrounded by her rock collection, her face still red from crying. "Hi," Evelyn said softly from the doorway. "Dad told me," Mia said, not looking up from the quartz crystal she was turning over in her hands, "that you can walk, that you were pretending." "I'm so sorry, Mia." "Why did you lie?" Now Mia looked up, and the hurt in her eyes was devastating. "Did you think we wouldn't like you if you could walk? Because that's stupid. I would have liked you anyway. Evelyn's throat closed up. Of course. Of course this 9-year-old had cut right to the heart of it, seeing the insecurity that Evelyn had dressed up as a test. I was scared, Evelyn admitted, moving into the room and sitting on the edge of Mia's bed. Someone I loved hurt me really badly, and I got scared that nobody would like me for who I really was. So I pretended to be someone different. But lying is wrong, Mia said with the absolute moral certainty of childhood. Mrs. Henderson says lying is always wrong. Mrs. Henderson is right. Lying is wrong. And I'm sorry I did it. Mia was quiet for a moment, studying the crystal. Connor lied about my mom today. He said she died because we were poor, which isn't true. Dad says sometimes people lie because they're ignorant, and sometimes they lie because they're scared. Which one are you? Scared, Evelyn said. Definitely scared. Of what? Of not being enough. Of people only caring about me for what I have instead of who I am. Mia considered this with a seriousness that was somehow more painful than anger would have been. That's sad, she said finally, but it's still not okay to lie to people who are nice to you. You're absolutely right. Are you going to leave now? The question hung in the air. Evelyn looked at this wise, hurt 9-year-old and wanted more than anything to say no, to promise she'd stay and make it right, but she didn't have that right anymore. I think I have to, Evelyn said. Your dad is very angry with me, and he has every right to be. He's not mad, Mia said. He's sad. It's different. He gets the same face he got when Mom's pictures made him cry, like something good turned out to be not real. The accuracy of that observation made Evelyn's chest ache. I'm sorry I made him sad, and I'm sorry I made you sad. Mia set down her crystal and looked at Evelyn with those serious gray eyes, her father's eyes. I'm sad you lied. But I'm not sad I met you. Even if you were pretending, some of it was real, right? You really liked my rocks, and you really thought my comics were cool? All of that was real, Evelyn promised. The only thing that wasn't real was the wheelchair. Everything else, how much I liked spending time with you, how much I admired your dad, how much this place felt like home. All of that was completely real. Mia nodded slowly, processing this. Then she did something unexpected. She hugged Evelyn. I hope you stop being scared, she whispered, because you're really nice when you're not pretending. Evelyn hugged her back, tears falling freely now. Thank you, Mia. You're one of the bravest people I've ever met. When Mia finally let go, she picked up her favorite geode, the one with purple crystals inside. You should take this, she said, holding it out. Oh, honey, I can't take your favorite rock. It's a gift. Mrs. Henderson says gifts mean you care about someone even when you're mad at them. Mia pressed the geode into Evelyn's hands. So you remember that some things are beautiful on the inside even when they don't look perfect on the outside. The metaphor wasn't subtle, but it broke Evelyn's heart anyway. She closed her fingers around the geode, feeling its weight, its solidity. I'll treasure it, she promised. Noah was waiting at the bottom of the stairs. He'd heard everything. The house was small enough that privacy was relative. His expression was softer now, but still guarded. She's a remarkable kid, Evelyn said. She is. Noah's voice was tired. Look, about what I said earlier. You were right, about everything. I was angry. I'm still angry, honestly. But Mia's right too. Some of it was real, wasn't it? Evelyn met his eyes, willing him to see the truth in hers. All of it was real. The way I felt here, with you and Mia. That was the most real thing I've experienced in years. The wheelchair was a lie, but everything else was true. That's going to have to be enough then, Noah said, because I don't know how to trust you right now, and I need to protect my daughter. I understand. I'll call my assistant and arrange for a car. I'll be out of your way within the hour. She expected relief on his face. Instead, she saw something that looked like regret. But he didn't tell her to stay, and she didn't ask if she could. Evelyn made the call to Patricia, who was simultaneously relieved, furious, and already making arrangements. A car will be there in 2 hours, Patricia said crisply, and we need to talk about everything. I know. She packed quickly. There wasn't much to pack. The wedding dress, carefully folded despite its ruined state. Noah's flannel shirt, which she started to take before realizing that would be weird, and leaving it folded on the bed instead. The geode from Mia, wrapped carefully in tissue. Noah made them all lunch, sandwiches again, because apparently that was his default. They ate in uncomfortable silence, all the easy warmth of the previous days gone. Mia picked at her food, shooting looks between her father and Evelyn like she was trying to figure out how to fix things. "I don't want you to go," Mia said finally, her voice small. "I know, sweetie. But sometimes the grown-up thing to do is to leave when you've made a mess of things. Can you come back after Dad stops being sad mad?" Evelyn looked at Noah, who was suddenly very interested in his sandwich. "I don't know," she said honestly. "That's up to your dad." The car arrived exactly when Patricia said it would, a sleek black SUV that looked absurdly out of place on the dirt road. The driver was professional and discreet, loading Evelyn's minimal belongings without comment. Mia hugged her goodbye, squeezing tight. "Remember what the geode means," she whispered. "I will." Noah walked her to the car, his hands in his pockets. For a moment they just stood there, looking at each other, and Evelyn tried to memorize his face. The gray eyes, the worry lines, the solid presence of him. "Thank you," she said, "for everything. For stopping on that road. For taking me in. For showing me what real kindness looks like." "You're welcome." He paused, then added quietly, "For what it's worth, I'm glad I stopped. Even with all of this, I'm glad I met you." It wasn't forgiveness, but it was something. Evelyn held on to it as she climbed into the car, as the driver pulled away, as she watched Noah and the cabin disappear in the rearview mirror. She'd come to Montana running from a lie, and she'd left having told a bigger one. But somewhere in between, in that small cabin with a widower and his daughter, Evelyn had found something she hadn't known she was looking for. She'd found home. And then she'd lost it. The geode sat heavy in her lap, reminding her that beautiful things could exist inside broken vessels. Reminding her that she needed to be brave enough to show people what was inside, even when it was terrifying. Tomorrow she'd go back to being Evelyn Grace, billionaire heiress. But tonight, as the Montana landscape rolled past, she let herself be just Evelyn, flawed and scared and desperately wishing she could go back and do everything differently. But there was no going back. There was only forward. And forward, she was beginning to realize, might mean finding a way to make this right. The city hit Evelyn like a wall of noise and glass and obligations she'd forgotten existed. Patricia met her at the penthouse with a tablet full of missed meetings, a stack of documents requiring signatures, and an expression that managed to convey both relief and profound disappointment. 3 days, Patricia said, following Evelyn through the marble foyer. "You disappeared for 3 days. Your father threatened to have me fired. The board called an emergency meeting. Marcus has been doing interviews saying you had a breakdown." Evelyn set down Mia's geode on the entrance table. It looked absurdly out of place among the crystal sculpture and fresh orchids, and turned to face her assistant. Patricia was 52, unflappable, and had been with the family since before Evelyn was born. She'd seen Evelyn through tantrums and graduations and her mother's funeral. If anyone had earned the right to be angry, it was her. "I'm sorry," Evelyn said. "I wasn't thinking clearly." "That much is obvious," Patricia's voice softened slightly. "Are you all right? Really all right?" "I don't know." Evelyn walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the city. 23 floors up, the world looked small and manageable, nothing like the raw reality of pine trees and gravel roads. "I don't think I've been all right in a very long time." "You called off the wedding. That's all right." "I didn't call it off. I ran away from it in a wheelchair and let a stranger think I was helpless so I could test if people would be kind to me." Evelyn laughed bitterly. "And then I lied to him and his daughter for 2 days because I was too much of a coward to tell the truth." Patricia was quiet for a long moment. "That doesn't sound like you." "Maybe it's exactly like me. Maybe I've been lying to everyone for so long that I don't know how to do anything else." Evelyn pressed her forehead against the cool glass. "Marcus was right about one thing. I am damaged goods." "Marcus is an idiot who couldn't see value if it wasn't printed on a bank statement," Patricia said sharply. "And whatever you did in Montana, whatever mistakes you made, they came from a place of pain. That doesn't excuse them, but it explains them." "I hurt people, Patricia. Good people who didn't deserve it. Then make it right." Evelyn turned to look at her assistant. How? I don't know. But I've watched you solve problems 1,000 times more complicated than this. You'll figure it out. Patricia consulted her tablet. But first, you need to deal with your father. He's been calling every hour, and the press is starting to ask questions about why you missed your own wedding. The next week was a blur of damage control and obligations. Evelyn met with her father, a tense lunch where Charles Grace made it clear that running away from a wedding, regardless of the reason, was unacceptable behavior for someone in her position. She sat through board meetings where she could feel the other members evaluating her, wondering if she was stable enough to run the company. She gave a carefully worded statement to the press about calling off the wedding due to personal differences, and watched Marcus do his own interview painting himself as the victim of an unstable woman. Through it all, Evelyn felt like she was moving through water, everything muffled and distant. Her penthouse felt like a museum, beautiful and cold. Her office felt like a cage, all glass and steel and expectations. Even her clothes felt wrong, designer suits and Italian leather when all she wanted was flannel and comfort. She kept Mia's geode on her desk, tucked beside her computer where she could see it. Her executive team clearly thought it was an odd decorating choice, but no one asked about it. No one asked about anything real. They asked about market projections and quarterly reports and strategic initiatives, but no one asked if she was okay, if she needed help, if the person inside the expensive suit was actually holding together or falling apart. 2 weeks after leaving Montana, Evelyn was in a meeting with her CFO when her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. She glanced at it discreetly. "This is Mia. I got your number from when you charged your phone at our house. Dad doesn't know I'm texting. Are you okay?" Evelyn's heart clenched. She typed back quickly under the table. "I'm okay, sweetie. How are you?" "Sad? Dad is sad too, but he pretends he's not. He goes to his workshop a lot and works really late. I think he misses you." "Mia, I'm in a meeting. Can I call you later?" "Okay, but don't tell Dad I texted. He'll be mad I took your number." "Our secret. Talk soon." Evelyn looked up to find her CFO staring at her expectantly, clearly waiting for a response to a question she hadn't heard. "I'm sorry, could you repeat that?" The meeting dragged on for another hour, but Evelyn's mind was in Montana, in a cabin with a 9-year-old who texted in complete sentences and worried about her father. When it finally ended, she went back to her office and closed the door, staring at the geode until her assistant knocked to remind her about her next appointment. That night, alone in her penthouse with the city lights glittering below, Evelyn called Mia. A child answered on the third ring, her voice excited but trying to whisper. "Evelyn?" "Hi, Mia. Is this a good time? Where's your dad?" "In the shower. I have maybe 10 minutes. There was a rustling sound like Mia was moving to a different room. "I'm in my closet now. He won't hear." "You shouldn't have to hide to talk to me." "I know, but Dad gets a weird face when anyone mentions you. Not mad, just sad, like he doesn't want to talk about it." Mia paused. "Do you miss us?" The question was so direct, so vulnerable, that Evelyn felt tears spring to her eyes. "Every single day." "Good. I mean, not good that you're sad, but good that you miss us. Because we miss you too, even though Dad won't say it." "How's school? Did Connor apologize?" "Sort of. Mrs. Henderson made him, but he didn't really mean it. But that's okay because Zoe told him he was ignorant, which is a good word because it means he doesn't know stuff, but it sounds fancy, so Mrs. Henderson couldn't get mad at her for it." Evelyn laughed despite herself. "Zoe sounds like a good friend." "She is. She asked if you were my new mom and I said no, you were just someone who visited, but I wished I could have said yes." Mia's voice got smaller. "Is that bad? That I wished that?" "Oh, sweetie, no, that's not bad at all. But your mom, your real mom, she would want you to remember her." "I do remember her. I remember she smelled like vanilla and she sang really loud in the car, even though she wasn't good at singing, and she always let me have 2 cookies after dinner, even when Dad said 1 was enough." There was a sniffle. "But I don't remember her voice anymore." "Not really. Sometimes I think I do, but then I'm not sure if I'm remembering her or just remembering the videos Dad shows me." Evelyn's heart broke. "I bet your dad would love to tell you more stories about her. Have you asked him? It makes him sad." Sometimes being a little sad is worth it if it means remembering someone you love. They talked for a few more minutes about rocks and school and the new comic book Mia had gotten from the library until Evelyn heard a voice in the background calling Mia's name. "I gotta go," Mia whispered. "Dad's out of the shower. Can I call you again?" "Anytime you want. But Mia, maybe you should tell your dad you're talking to me. I don't want you to have to sneak around." "Maybe. Bye, Evelyn." The line went dead, and Evelyn was left alone with the echo of a 9-year-old's voice and the weight of everything she'd lost. Over the next 2 weeks, Mia called 3 more times. Each call was brief, squeezed into moments when Noah was working in his shop or running errands. Each call left Evelyn feeling more connected to Montana and more disconnected from her life in the city. She learned that Noah had taken on an extra commission, a bookshelf for the library, and was working long hours. She learned that Mia had aced her science test. She learned that their house felt too quiet now, that Mia had put Evelyn's coffee mug in her room like a keepsake. And she learned that Noah never talked about Evelyn, never mentioned her name, acted like those 2 days had never happened. "I think he's trying to forget you," Mia said during their 4th call. "But I don't think it's working because sometimes I catch him just staring at nothing, like he's thinking really hard about something sad." "Your dad has been through a lot, Mia. He's protecting himself." "From what?" "From getting hurt again." "But you wouldn't hurt him again, right? Because you said you were sorry and you learned your lesson." Evelyn wished she had a child's certainty that apologies fixed everything. "I hope I wouldn't. But your dad doesn't know that. He only knows I lied before, so why should he believe anything else I say?" "Because people can change," Mia said with absolute conviction. "Mrs. Henderson says people can learn from mistakes. That's what mistakes are for, learning." "Mrs. Henderson is very wise." "I know, so when are you coming back?" The question Evelyn had been dreading. "I don't know if I can come back, sweetie. Your dad doesn't want to see me." "But did you ask him?" "No, but then how do you know? You can't know what people want unless you ask them. That's what Dad tells me when I'm scared to ask for stuff." Out of the mouths of babes, Evelyn thought. "You're right, but asking means risking that he'll say no, and I don't know if I'm brave enough for that." "You were brave enough to walk again," Mia pointed out. "You can be brave enough to talk to Dad." After that call, Evelyn couldn't stop thinking about it. Was she brave enough? She'd built a career making difficult decisions, negotiating high-stakes deals, standing up to men twice her age who thought she was too young or too female to run a company. But asking Noah for forgiveness, risking the rejection she probably deserved, that felt harder than anything she'd ever done. 3 weeks after leaving Montana, Evelyn was reviewing contracts when Patricia knocked on her office door. "There's someone here to see you. He doesn't have an appointment, but he says it's important." "A Noah Bennett?" Evelyn's heart stopped, then started again, too fast. "Noah's here? In Denver?" "Downstairs in the lobby. Security called up. Should I have them send him away?" "No." Evelyn stood, suddenly aware of how corporate she looked in her tailored suit and heels. "Send him up. No, wait. I'll go down. Give me 2 minutes." She rushed to the bathroom, checking her reflection with an urgency that felt absurd. She looked professional, polished, perfect. Everything she'd been 3 weeks ago and nothing like the woman who'd sat in his cabin eating pancakes. She wanted to change, but into what? She didn't keep casual clothes at the office. "You're stalling," she told her reflection. "Just go." The elevator ride down felt eternal. 23 floors to think about what he might say, what she should say, whether this was closure or something else. The doors opened to the marble lobby with its modern art and uncomfortable furniture designed to look impressive rather than inviting. Noah stood near the reception desk, hands in his pockets, looking as out of place as Evelyn had felt in his cabin. He wore jeans and a flannel shirt, the same one he'd lent her, she realized, and work boots that were clean but worn. His eyes found hers across the lobby, and Evelyn forgot how to breathe. She walked toward him, her heels clicking on marble, maintaining the composure she'd learned from years of business meetings. But inside, she was falling apart. "Noah, this is... I wasn't expecting..." She stopped, started over. "Hi." "Hi." He looked around the lobby, at the art that probably cost more than his truck, at the security desk, and the fountain and the general atmosphere of wealth. Impressive. It's just a building. It's not just a building. It's a statement. He looked back at her. I'm guessing the company you help run is actually a company you own? My family owns it. I run it. There's a difference. Not much of one. They stood there awkwardly, a canyon of polished marble between them, and 3 weeks of silence, and everything they hadn't said. Would you like to go somewhere to talk? Evelyn asked. There's a coffee shop across the street, or we could use a conference room upstairs, or I can't stay long. I drove down this morning and I need to get back before Mia's bus comes. Noah pulled something from his pocket. A small cedar carving, unfinished, the word hope carved into its surface. Mia told me about the phone calls. All of them. She felt guilty about sneaking around, so she confessed last night. Evelyn's heart sank. I told her to tell you. I didn't want her to have to hide it. I know. She told me that too. He turned the carving over in his hands. She's been working on this in my shop. Wanted to finish it and send it to you, but she's 9 and doesn't really know how to use the tools properly yet. So I've been helping her, and as I was helping her make this thing for you, I realized I was an idiot. You're not an idiot. I am. Because I spent 3 weeks being angry at you for lying when the truth is, I was really angry at myself for caring about you despite the lies. For missing you despite knowing I should just forget about it. He held out the carving. Mia says this is for you. She says hope means believing things can get better even when they're bad right now. Evelyn took the carving with shaking hands. The cedar was smooth, the letters carved with care, and she could imagine Mia's small hands working on it, tongue probably sticking out in concentration. It's beautiful. She also says I'm being stubborn and stupid, and that if I don't at least try to forgive you, she's going to be disappointed in me. And I can handle a lot of things, but disappointing my daughter isn't one of them. Noah, let me finish, please. He took a breath. You lied to me. About the wheelchair, about who you were, about a lot of things. And that hurt, especially because I'd been honest with you about Sarah, about everything. But I've had 3 weeks to think about it, and here's what I figured out. You lied because someone broke your heart and made you think you had to protect yourself. That doesn't make the lying okay, but it makes it make sense. It doesn't excuse it. No, it doesn't. But I've also been thinking about what you said before you left, that everything else was real. The way you were with Mia, the conversations we had, the person you were when you weren't pretending. Was that real? Evelyn looked at him, at the hope and fear and uncertainty in his eyes, and knew this was her moment. The truth, all of it, with nothing held back. It was the most real I've been in years, she said quietly. Maybe ever. Everything I felt in your home, every laugh with Mia, every conversation with you, that was me. The real me. The me I forgot I could be. And this? He gestured at the lobby, the building, the life she inhabited. Is this the real you too? This is the obligated me. The responsible me. The me that does what's expected because that's what I've always done. She looked down at the carving in her hands. But I don't know if it's the me I want to be anymore. Noah was quiet for a moment, studying her. What do you want, Evelyn? Really want, not what you should want or what makes sense. What do you actually want? The question hung between them, heavy with possibility. What did she want? She wanted pancakes for dinner and rock collections and a man who carried her not because he had to, but because he wanted to help. She wanted a 9-year-old's uncomplicated affection and a cabin that smelled like pine and cedar. She wanted to be someone who built things with her hands, instead of managing portfolios and attending board meetings. But wanting something and being able to have it were different things. It doesn't matter what I want, Evelyn said. I have responsibilities here. A company to run, employees who depend on me, obligations I can't just walk away from. That's not what I asked. Noah, what do you want? He repeated, and there was something intense in his voice now, something that demanded honesty. I want to come home, Evelyn admitted, her voice breaking. To your home, with you and Mia. I want to drink coffee on your porch and watch you build furniture and help Mia with her homework. I want to be part of something real instead of performing for people who don't actually care about me. But I can't have that because I ruined it. And even if you could forgive me, I have a whole life here that I can't just abandon. Why not? The question was so simple it was almost absurd. Because people are counting on me. Because I have a responsibility to my family's legacy. Because you don't just walk away from $1 billion company because you'd rather live in a cabin in Montana. Your father ran that company for 30 years before you. I'm guessing he could do it again if he had to. And I'm guessing there are 100 qualified people who could step in if you wanted to step away. Noah moved closer, and Evelyn could smell sawdust and soap. I'm not asking you to give up everything. I'm asking what you want for yourself, not for everyone else. I want to be with you, Evelyn said, the words tumbling out before she could stop them. I want to be with you and Mia and figure out how to be the person I was in your cabin. But I'm scared. I'm scared that I'll mess it up again, that I'll disappoint you, that I'm not actually that person but just someone pretending to be her. Everyone's pretending to be someone, Noah said gently. The difference is whether you're pretending to be who others want you to be or who you actually want to be. And I hope, that person in my cabin was who you actually want to be. She was. She is. Evelyn wiped her eyes, not caring that her mascara was probably running. But Noah, I lied to you, to both of you. How can you even consider trusting me again? Because Mia likes you, and Mia's got better judgment than most adults I know. Because you owned up to the lie instead of trying to justify it. And because, he paused, seeming to gather courage. Because I haven't been able to stop thinking about you for 3 weeks, and I'm tired of pretending I don't care what happens to you. The confession hung in the air between them. Evelyn's heart was pounding so hard she was sure he could hear it. I don't know how this works, she said. The logistics, I mean. I can't just disappear. There are things I need to handle here. Transitions I need to make if I'm going to step away from the company. I'm not asking you to disappear tomorrow. I'm asking if you want to try, if you want to figure out a way to have both. Whatever parts of this life you need to keep, and whatever parts of that life you want to build with us. Is that even possible? I don't know. But I know I'd rather try and fail than spend the rest of my life wondering what if. Noah reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and took her hand. His palm was rough with calluses, warm, steady. Come back. Not forever, not with any promises about what happens next. Just come back and let's see if we can figure this out. Your daughter will have questions. Mia always has questions. We'll answer them together. You're sure? You're really sure you want to try this? I drove 4 hours to stand in this lobby that costs more than my house and ask you to come home with me. I'm sure. Evelyn looked around the lobby, at the life she'd built, the obligations she'd accepted, the person everyone expected her to be. Then she looked at Noah, at the hope in his eyes and the cedar carving in her hands, and the possibility of something real and messy and terrifyingly uncertain. She thought about Mia's text. You were brave enough to walk again. You can be brave enough to talk to Dad. Maybe it was time to be brave. Okay, Evelyn said, but I need a few days. I need to talk to my father and the board, and I need to set up systems so I can work remotely for a while. I can't just vanish again. That wouldn't be fair to anyone, but I can transition. I can figure out how to be in both places. How long? A week, maybe 2. Would that work? Noah smiled, really smiled, for the first time since he'd walked into the lobby. That would work. Take whatever time you need. Just promise me you'll actually come back this time. Don't say you will, and then decide it's too complicated. I promise. Evelyn squeezed his hand. I'm scared I'll mess this up. Probably you will. Probably I will too. That's how relationships work. People mess up and then figure out how to fix it. He glanced at his watch. I really do need to go. Mia's bus comes in 4 hours and I don't want her coming home to an empty house. Tell her I got the carving. Tell her it's perfect and I'll keep it on my nightstand. Tell her yourself when you get there. Noah squeezed her hand once more, then let go. 2 weeks, Evelyn. I'll be waiting. He walked away and Evelyn watched him go. This man who'd stopped for a stranger, who'd carried her when he thought she needed help, who was brave enough to drive 4 hours to offer forgiveness she wasn't sure she deserved. When he disappeared through the glass doors, Evelyn looked down at the carving in her hands. Hope. Such a small word for such an enormous thing. She went back upstairs to her office where Patricia was waiting with her afternoon schedule and a knowing look. Cancel everything for the next 2 weeks, Evelyn said. Everything? Everything. And schedule a meeting with my father and the board for tomorrow morning. I need to discuss transitioning to a remote work arrangement. Patricia's eyebrows rose. That will not go over well. Probably not, but it's happening anyway. Evelyn set the carving on her desk beside Mia's geode. And Patricia, thank you for everything, especially for not saying I told you so. The day's not over yet, Patricia said dryly, but she was smiling. The meeting with her father and the board went exactly as poorly as expected. Charles Grace did not understand why his daughter suddenly needed to work remotely from Montana. The board members questioned whether this was a sign of instability following the canceled wedding. The CFO wondered aloud if Evelyn was having some kind of crisis that required professional help. Evelyn listened to all of it, maintaining the composure she'd perfected over years of business meetings, and then said simply, I'm not asking permission. I'm informing you of my decision. I'll be available by phone and video conference. I'll fly in for critical meetings, but my primary residence will be in Montana for the foreseeable future. This is about a man, her father said flatly. This is about me figuring out what kind of life I want to live. You have responsibilities. I know, and I'm not abandoning them. I'm just choosing to fulfill them from somewhere other than Denver. They argued for another hour. Her father threatened. The board members expressed concerns. The CFO suggested a leave of absence instead. But Evelyn held firm, and eventually they accepted that she was doing this whether they liked it or not. She spent the next week making arrangements, setting up her home office to work remotely, delegating tasks to her executive team, establishing communication protocols. She met with her accountant and lawyer to discuss logistics. She even hired a local assistant in Montana who could handle any on-ground needs. Through it all, she texted with Mia, who was counting down the days with increasing excitement. Noah sent one text, brief and to the point. Take your time. We're not going anywhere. On the night before she was scheduled to leave, Evelyn stood in her penthouse and looked around at the life she was partially leaving behind. The expensive furniture, the art collection, the closet full of designer clothes. It had taken years to build this life, and she was walking away from most of it for a cabin in the woods, and a man who built furniture and a 9-year-old who collected rocks. It should have felt scary. Instead, it felt like finally exhaling after holding her breath for years. Patricia helped her pack, not just clothes, but the things that mattered. Photos of her mother, her favorite books, the geode and the carving, comfortable clothes instead of power suits. You're really doing this, Patricia said, folding a sweater. I really am. Good. You've been miserable for years. Maybe this will help. You knew I was miserable? Everyone knew. We just didn't say anything because that's what you pay us for. Discretion. Patricia smiled. For what it's worth, I think you're making the right choice, even if your father doesn't. Thank you, Patricia, for everything. Don't thank me yet. You'll still need me. Someone has to manage the disaster when you forget about a board meeting because you're too busy looking at rocks or whatever it is people do in Montana. Evelyn laughed, feeling lighter than she had in weeks. Deal. She left Denver early the next morning, driving instead of flying because she wanted the time to think, to process, to prepare for what came next. The city gave way to suburbs, suburbs to small towns, towns to open country. The landscape changed gradually. Flat plains rising into foothills, foothills becoming mountains, mountains giving way to the kind of wilderness where cell service was optional and the nearest neighbor might be miles away. 4 hours from Noah's cabin, Evelyn pulled over at a rest stop and called Mia. Where are you? Mia demanded. Dad keeps checking his phone like you might say you're not coming. I'm coming. I'm about 4 hours away, maybe less if traffic's good. Yeah! There was muffled talking, Mia covering the phone to yell something to Noah. Then she was back. Dad says dinner's at 6, and you better be hungry because he's making pot roast, which is fancy for us. Tell your dad I'm always hungry for his cooking. She says she's always hungry for your cooking, Mia yelled, clearly not covering the phone this time. Dad says that's good because he made too much as usual. Are you nervous? Very nervous. Don't be. We're just us. You know us already. A pause. Well, the real us. And now you'll be the real you. So it'll be like starting over, but better because we already like each other. Out of the mouths of babes. You're very wise, you know that? Mrs. Henderson says I'm precocious, which I think is the same thing. They talked for a few more minutes before Mia had to go help set the table. Evelyn sat in her car at the rest stop, watching mountains rise in the distance, and thought about what Mia had said. Starting over, but better because they already knew they liked each other. Maybe that was enough. Maybe that was everything. She got back on the road. The last hour of the drive felt eternal and too fast at the same time. Every mile brought her closer to a future she'd chosen instead of inherited, and with every mile the knot in her stomach tightened. What if this was a mistake? What if she couldn't make it work? What if Noah realized she was too damaged, too complicated, too much? But then she turned onto the gravel road that led to his cabin, and she saw Mia standing at the end of the driveway, bouncing on her toes with excitement, and all the doubts fell away. Evelyn parked and barely had time to get out before Mia launched herself forward, wrapping her arms around Evelyn's waist. You came. You really came. I promised I would. Evelyn hugged her back, feeling tears prick her eyes. Come on, Dad's inside pretending he's not nervous, but he keeps checking the pot roast like it's going to burn, even though it's not even time yet. Mia grabbed Evelyn's hand and pulled her toward the cabin. Noah appeared on the porch, wearing jeans and a button-down shirt that looked suspiciously new, his hair still damp from a shower. He smiled when he saw her, tentative but real. You made it. I made it. Evelyn climbed the porch steps, still holding Mia's hand. 4 hours and 2 gas station coffees later, but I made it. Good. He looked at her like he was memorizing her face, checking to make sure she was real. Welcome home. Home. The words settled over her like a blanket, warm and safe and exactly right. Come see my room, Mia demanded. I cleaned it and everything, well, mostly everything. The rock collection got bigger, so there's rocks on kind of every surface, but that's organized mess, which Dad says is better than disorganized mess. Evelyn let herself be pulled inside, and the smell of pot roast and cedar and home washed over her. Nothing had changed. Same worn furniture, same photos on the mantle, same comfortable chaos. But everything felt different because this time she wasn't a guest. This time she was staying. Dinner was warm and noisy and perfect. Mia talked nonstop, telling Evelyn everything she'd missed in the 3 weeks. The new rock she'd found, the science fair project she was planning, the fact that Connor Michaels had actually apologized for real this time because his mom made him. Noah was quieter, but his eyes kept finding Evelyn across the table, checking to make sure she was still there. After Mia went to bed, after much protesting that she wasn't tired even though she was clearly exhausted, Noah and Evelyn sat on the porch, watching the stars come out over the pine trees. This is going to be hard, Noah said finally. Figuring out how this works. Your life there. Our life here. I know. And there's going to be awkward moments. Questions we don't know how to answer. Times when we don't know what we are to each other. I know that too. But I want to try. If you do. Evelyn reached over and took his hand, lacing their fingers together. I want to try. I want to build something real with you. No lies, no tests, no pretending. Just us, figuring it out as we go. Just us, Noah agreed. He squeezed her hand. Thank you for coming back, for being brave enough to try. Thank you for letting me, for forgiving me when you didn't have to. They sat in comfortable silence as night deepened around them, and Evelyn thought about hope, the word carved into cedar, the thing Mia believed in, the fragile possibility that broken things could be mended and lives could change course. She'd come to Montana running from a lie. She'd left carrying the weight of a bigger one, but she'd come back ready to tell the truth about who she was, who she wanted to be, and what she was willing to fight for. Inside the cabin, a home she was learning to think of as hers, Mia slept with the geode on her nightstand. In the workshop, half-finished furniture waited for Noah's careful hands. And on the porch, 2 people who'd found each other in the most unlikely way sat hand in hand, hoping that this fragile, precious thing they were building would be strong enough to last. It wouldn't be easy. It wouldn't be perfect. But it would be real. And real, Evelyn was finally learning, was worth any risk. The first week back felt like learning to breathe underwater. Evelyn woke each morning in the guest room. Noah had insisted, saying they needed to take things slow, to the sound of Mia's alarm clock blaring down the hall and the smell of coffee already brewing. She'd lie there for a moment, disoriented by the absence of city noise, the presence of birdsong, the way sunlight filtered through simple curtains instead of automated blinds. It was strange and uncomfortable and absolutely right. She'd emerged to find Noah already dressed for the day, usually covered in sawdust from an early morning session in the workshop, pouring coffee into mismatched mugs. Mia would appear minutes later, hair tangled from sleep, already talking about whatever dream she'd had, or fact she'd remembered, or plans she'd made for after school. "We should go to the creek this weekend," Mia announced on the third morning, spreading peanut butter on toast with aggressive enthusiasm. "Now that Evelyn can walk, we can go to the good spots that are too far for the wheelchair. There's this place where the water pools and you can see crawfish if you're really quiet." "If Evelyn wants to," Noah said, glancing at her over his coffee. "She might have work to do." "I'd love to see the crawfish," Evelyn said. "Work can wait until Sunday." It was a small moment, barely worth noting, but it felt significant. Work could wait. When had she ever said that before? When had anything been allowed to wait when the company needed her? The video conferences were jarring, though. Evelyn would set up her laptop in Noah's small office, really more of a storage room with a desk, and transform from the woman in jeans and one of Noah's flannel shirts into the polished executive her team expected. The cognitive dissonance was extreme. One minute she'd be helping Mia with fractions, the next she'd be discussing market projections with people who still thought she was in Denver. On Thursday, she was in the middle of a board meeting when Mia burst into the room, clearly forgetting Evelyn was on a call. "Evelyn, come quick! There's a deer in the yard with a baby, and it's so cute, and oh!" Mia froze, seeing the laptop, the professional blazer Evelyn had put on just for the video call. "Sorry, I didn't know you were working." Evelyn muted herself quickly. "It's okay, sweetie. Give me 10 minutes and I'll come see the deer, okay?" Mia nodded and disappeared, but not before one of the board members asked, "Who was that?" Evelyn hesitated, not sure what to call Mia. Not her daughter, not exactly a stepdaughter, when she and Noah hadn't even defined what they were to each other. "A friend's daughter. I'm staying with friends while I work remotely." It wasn't a lie exactly, but it felt like one. After the meeting ended, Evelyn sat in the small office feeling the weight of all the pieces of her life that didn't quite fit together. The executive and the woman learning to live in a cabin. The billionaire and the person who got excited about seeing crawfish. The person everyone expected her to be and the person she was trying to become. Noah found her there 20 minutes later, still staring at the blank screen. "Mia feels bad about interrupting," he said, leaning against the doorframe. "I told her it was fine, that everyone has interruptions, but she's worried you're mad." "I'm not mad. I'm just—" Evelyn gestured helplessly at the laptop, at the room, at everything. "I'm trying to figure out how to be both people at once, and I don't think it's working." "Both people?" "The person they need me to be, and the person I want to be with you and Mia. They don't fit together, like trying to wear a ball gown to go hiking." Noah pulled up the only other chair in the room, a folding metal one that had seen better days, and sat down. "You know what I think? I think you're trying too hard to keep them separate. Like there's Work Evelyn and Montana Evelyn, and they can't ever overlap." "They can't. You saw what happened when Mia came in. I had to explain who she was like she was nobody, and that felt awful. So stop explaining. Stop hiding. Tell them you're living in Montana with a single dad and his daughter. Tell them you're figuring out a different kind of life. Let the people overlap." He reached over and took her hand. "Unless you're embarrassed of us, which I'd understand given—" "No," Evelyn interrupted. "God, no, I'm not embarrassed. I'm just trying to protect this. Protect us. The moment I tell people about you and Mia, they'll have opinions. My father will have opinions. The board will question my judgment. The press will dig into your life and Mia's life and make everything complicated." "It's already complicated," Noah pointed out. "And keeping secrets didn't work out so well last time." He was right, and they both knew it. But knowing it didn't make it easier. That evening, after Mia had gone to bed, Evelyn and Noah sat on the porch with blankets wrapped around their shoulders against the autumn chill. The sky was impossibly clear, stars scattered like diamonds on velvet. "I need to tell you something," Noah said, his voice quiet. about why I'm being so careful, about why I keep saying we should take things slow. Evelyn waited, sensing this was important. After Sarah died, I dated someone. About a year later. Rachel. She was nice, normal, a teacher at Mia's school. We went out a few times, and I thought maybe I could do this. Maybe I could move forward. He was staring out at the dark trees, not looking at Evelyn. Mia got attached really fast. Started calling Rachel her friend, talking about her all the time, asking when she was coming over, and then Rachel decided it was too much. The widower with a kid, the baggage, the whole situation. She ended it after 2 months. Mia was devastated. Not because she understood what dating was, but because she thought she had a new friend, and suddenly that friend was gone. She cried for weeks, asked what she'd done wrong, why Rachel didn't like her anymore. His voice cracked slightly. I swore after that I wouldn't bring anyone into her life unless I was absolutely sure. Unless I knew they were staying. Evelyn felt the weight of that responsibility settle on her shoulders. And you're not sure I'm staying. I want to be sure. But Evelyn, you've got a billion-dollar company and a penthouse in Denver and a whole life that has nothing to do with a cabin in Montana. What happens when winter comes and it's 20 below and the power goes out and you're stuck here for days with nothing to do? What happens when you miss the museums and restaurants and culture? What happens when being here stops feeling like an adventure and starts feeling like a prison? You think I'll leave. I think you might realize this isn't what you want. And that's okay. It's your right to change your mind. But Mia's already so attached to you. If you leave again, it'll break her heart. And honestly, it'll break mine too. The confession hung in the cold air between them. Evelyn turned to look at him, at the vulnerability in his face, the fear he was finally admitting. I can't promise I won't make mistakes, she said slowly. I can't promise this will be easy, or that I won't have moments where I don't know if I can do this. But Noah, I drove 4 hours to get here. I restructured my entire life. I stood up to my father in a boardroom full of men who think I'm crazy. I didn't do that on a whim. I did it because when I was in Denver, all I could think about was coming home. Here, to you, and Mia. It's only been a week. It's been a week that felt more real than the last 10 years of my life. A week where I woke up happy instead of dreading the day. A week where I laughed every single day, where I felt like I mattered for who I am instead of what I can do for other people. She shifted closer to him, the blanket sliding off one shoulder. I'm not saying there won't be hard days, I'm sure there will be. But I'm choosing this. I'm choosing you. Noah looked at her for a long moment, searching her face for certainty. Whatever he found there must have been enough, because he leaned forward and kissed her, soft and tentative and full of hope. It was their first real kiss. Everything before had been charged with uncertainty, weighted with lies and questions. But this was honest. This was two people deciding to trust each other despite the fear, despite the very real possibility of getting hurt. When they pulled apart, Noah rested his forehead against hers. Okay, he whispered. Okay, we try. For real this time. For real this time, Evelyn agreed. The next morning, Evelyn woke to find a note slipped under her door. Mia's handwriting, careful and round. Dad told me you're staying for real this time. I'm really happy. Can we have pancakes to celebrate? They had pancakes. And over breakfast, with Mia chattering about school and Noah smiling into his coffee, Evelyn felt something shift. This wasn't just an experiment anymore. This wasn't just running away from her old life. This was building a new one, piece by piece, pancake by pancake, conversation by conversation. The weeks that followed fell into a rhythm. Evelyn worked mornings while Noah was in his workshop and Mia was at school. She took calls, reviewed documents, made decisions that affected hundreds of employees and millions of dollars. But she did it in comfortable clothes, with breaks to refill her coffee and look out the window at pine trees instead of skyscrapers. In the afternoons, she'd close the laptop and rejoin the world of the cabin. She learned to help Noah in the workshop, sanding edges and applying stain under his careful instruction. She discovered she was terrible at it, but loved it anyway, loved the smell of wood and varnish, loved watching something take shape under her hands. She helped Mia with homework at the kitchen table, struggling through the new math they taught in elementary schools now, laughing when Mia had to explain it to her like she was the student. She learned to cook Noah's simple recipes, graduated from watching to helping to occasionally making dinner herself. And slowly, carefully, she and Noah navigated what they were to each other. They held hands on the porch. They kissed goodnight before going to their separate rooms. They had long conversations about everything and nothing, his childhood in Montana, her lonely upbringing with nannies and boarding schools, the dreams they'd had as kids, and the ones they were building now. One evening, about 3 weeks after Evelyn's return, Mia asked the question they'd been dancing around. "Are you and Dad dating?" She was working on a diorama for school, carefully gluing cotton balls to look like clouds. Because Lucy Chen says when adults hold hands and kiss, that's dating. Evelyn glanced at Noah, who suddenly looked very interested in the book he was reading. "I guess we are," she said carefully. "Is that okay with you?" Mia considered this, adding another cotton ball to her sky. "Will you get married?" Noah started, but Mia talked over him. "Because if you get married, that would make you my stepmom, right? Which would be cool because then I'd have a mom again. Not the same as my real mom, but still a mom." Evelyn's throat tightened. "Sweetie, your dad and I are just starting to figure out what we are to each other. Marriage is way down the road, if it happens at all. But you like him, right? And he likes you. I can tell because he smiles different now than he did before you came back. Like he's happy instead of just okay." "Mia," Noah said, setting down his book, "this is a lot of big questions for something we haven't really talked about yet." "But you should talk about it," Mia insisted with 9-year-old logic. "Because if you like each other and you want to be together, you should just say so. That's what Mrs. Henderson says. People should use their words instead of hoping other people can read their minds." After Mia went to bed, Noah and Evelyn sat on the porch in silence for a long time. "Sorry about that," Noah said finally. "She's not usually so direct about personal stuff." "She's right, though. We haven't really talked about what this is, what we want it to be." "I know what I want it to be." Noah turned to look at her. "But I don't want to scare you off by wanting too much too fast." "What do you want?" He took a breath like he was gathering courage. "I want you here, permanently. Not as a guest, not as someone figuring out if this will work. I want you to move your stuff into my room. I want Mia to be able to tell her friends that she has a stepmom without it being weird. I want to wake up next to you every morning and fall asleep next to you every night. I want—" He stopped, shook his head. "See? Too much too fast." "What if it's not too much?" Evelyn's heart was pounding. "What if I want that too?" "Do you? Really? Because Evelyn, I'm not talking about casual dating. I'm talking about building a life together. I'm talking about being a family, you, me, and Mia. I'm talking about the kind of commitment that means when things get hard, we work through it instead of walking away." "I know what you're talking about. And yes, I want that too." Noah studied her face, looking for doubt. "You're sure? Because there's no pressure. We can keep taking things slow if you need more time. I spent 30 years taking things slow, being careful, making sure every decision was the right one according to everyone else's standards. And I was miserable." Evelyn reached for his hand. "The only time I've been truly happy in the last decade was here, with you and Mia. So yes, I'm sure. Terrified, but sure." "Terrified of what?" "Of messing this up, of not being a good enough mother figure for Mia, of you realizing I'm too damaged, too complicated, too much work." She laughed shakily. "Of all the ways this could go wrong." "You want to know what terrifies me?" Noah asked. "The idea of not trying, of letting fear keep us from something that could be amazing just because it might not work out." He pulled her closer. "We're both scared. That's okay. We'll be scared together." They sat wrapped in each other's arms as the temperature dropped and the stars wheeled overhead, and Evelyn felt something settle in her chest, a peace she hadn't known she was looking for. The next morning, she called her father. It was a conversation she'd been putting off, but Mia's questions had made it clear she couldn't keep living in two worlds without acknowledging it. "Evelyn," Charles Grace said, his voice as clipped and businesslike as ever, "I trust you're calling to tell me when you're coming back to Denver." "No, Dad. I'm calling to tell you I'm staying in Montana. Indefinitely." Silence. Then, Don't be ridiculous. You have responsibilities here, which I'm handling remotely. My team is excellent, the work is getting done, and I'm available whenever they need me. This is about that man, isn't it? The one the board mentioned. Evelyn took a breath. His name is Noah Bennett. He's a widowed single father and a furniture maker. And yes, this is about him, but it's also about me figuring out what kind of life I want to live. You're being impulsive. First you run out on your wedding, now you're shacking up with some carpenter in the middle of nowhere. This isn't like you. Maybe the old me, Evelyn said, surprised by how calm she felt. But I'm not that person anymore. I'm not the daughter who does everything you expect just to earn your approval. I'm someone who's choosing my own life. You're throwing away everything I built for you. No, I'm not. The company is fine. I'm still doing my job. I'm just doing it from a different location. And honestly, Dad, the company was your dream, not mine. I'm finally figuring out what my dreams are. Her father was silent for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was different, not softer exactly, but less certain. Your mother would be disappointed. It was a low blow, and they both knew it, but Evelyn didn't take the bait. Mom told me once, right before she died, that she wished she'd been braver, wished she'd chosen what she wanted instead of what was expected. She made me promise I wouldn't make the same mistake. It wasn't quite true. Her mother had been heavily medicated at the end, and most of their conversations had been fragments and confusion, but the spirit of it felt true. I'm keeping that promise. I see. Charles cleared his throat. Well, I suppose you're an adult and entitled to make your own mistakes, but don't expect me to support this. I don't need your support, Dad, but I'd like it. I'd like you to meet Noah and Mia, to see why I'm choosing this. But if you can't do that, I understand. After the call ended, Evelyn sat in the small office feeling lighter than she had in years. She'd done it. She'd chosen herself over her father's expectations, over the company, over the life everyone assumed she'd live. Noah found her there an hour later, staring out the window. How'd it go? About as well as expected. He thinks I'm making a mistake. Are you? Evelyn turned to face him, this man who'd stopped for a stranger, who'd forgiven her when he didn't have to, who was offering her a life she'd never imagined wanting. No, she said. I don't think I am. That weekend they went to the creek like Mia had wanted. The trail was narrow and rocky, winding through pine trees and over fallen logs, and Evelyn was breathless by the time they reached the pool where the water collected. But it was worth it. The water was so clear she could see every stone on the bottom, and sure enough, there were crawfish scuttling among the rocks. Mia waded in carefully, jeans rolled up to her knees, trying to catch one. Noah sat on a boulder, one arm around Evelyn's shoulders, watching his daughter with the kind of contentment that came from being exactly where you were supposed to be. Thank you, Evelyn said quietly. For what? For this. For giving me a second chance. For believing I could be someone different than who I was. You were always this person, Noah said. You just needed a place where it was safe to be her. They stayed at the creek for hours, long past when they probably should have headed back. They had a picnic lunch on the rocks. Sandwiches Noah had packed, apples from the local orchard, cookies Mia had helped make. They skipped stones and looked for interesting rocks and talked about nothing important. As the afternoon light started to slant golden through the trees, Mia came over to where Evelyn was sitting, her hands cupped around something. I found this for you, she said, opening her hands to reveal a piece of quartz, smaller than her geode, but perfectly formed. It's not as pretty as the one I gave you before, but I thought you could keep it in your pocket, so even when you're on work calls with boring people, you can touch it and remember you have us. Evelyn took the quartz, feeling tears prick her eyes. It's perfect, Mia. Thank you. You're welcome. Mia hesitated, then asked shyly, Can I call you something other than Evelyn? It feels weird to call you just your name when you're dating Dad and living with us. What would you want to call me? I don't know, not Mom, because that's my real mom, but maybe, I don't know, something that means you're special but not trying to replace her? Noah started to intervene. Mia, you don't have to. But Evelyn stopped him. What about Evie? She suggested. That's what my mom used to call me when I was little, before she got sick and everything got formal and sad. Mia tested it out. Evie, I like it. It sounds friendly. Can I call you Evie? I would love that. On the walk back to the cabin, Mia held both their hands, swinging between them, chattering about school and rocks and whether they could get a dog. Noah caught Evelyn's eye over his daughter's head and smiled, and Evelyn felt her heart so full it might burst. This was it. This was the life she'd been running toward without knowing it. Not perfect, not easy, but real and warm and full of the kind of love that didn't come with conditions or price tags. That night, after Mia was in bed, Evelyn moved her things from the guest room to Noah's room. It wasn't a grand gesture, just her clothes in his closet, her toiletries in his bathroom, her books on his nightstand, but it felt monumental anyway. Noah watched from the doorway as she unpacked, his expression unreadable. Second thoughts? Evelyn asked, trying to keep her voice light. No, just making sure this is real, that you're really here, really staying. I'm really staying. She set down the stack of clothes and crossed to him. I know it's fast. I know we're still figuring things out. But Noah, I love you. I probably loved you from the moment you stopped for a stranger on the road, but I definitely love you now. And I love Mia. And I love this life we're building together. He pulled her close, his arms solid and warm around her. I love you too. Have since you told Mia her comic book theory about the girl with powers was profound. Maybe before that. Definitely by the time you stood up and told me the truth, even though you knew it would hurt. They stood there in the doorway between past and future, holding each other, and Evelyn felt the last pieces of her old life fall away. She wasn't Evelyn Grace, billionaire heiress anymore. Or she was, but that was just one part of her now. She was also Evie, Mia's almost stepmom. She was Noah's partner. She was someone who helped sand furniture and went hiking to see crawfish, and kept rocks in her pocket to remind her of what mattered. The next few weeks brought their own challenges. Evelyn had to fly to Denver for an emergency board meeting, and the separation was harder than she expected. She missed Mia's science fair presentation and felt guilty for days, even though Mia insisted it was fine and showed her all the photos. She had a fight with Noah about household responsibilities when she got so absorbed in a work crisis that she forgot to pick up groceries like she'd promised. But they worked through it. They talked instead of letting resentments build. They apologized when they messed up. They figured out systems and schedules and ways to balance Evelyn's work responsibilities with the life they were building together. Mia helped in her own way. She'd appear in the office when Evelyn had been working too long, announcing it was time for a break, and they needed to go look at something interesting outside. She'd draw pictures of the three of them and leave them on Evelyn's desk. She'd give Evelyn rocks with notes attached. For when work is hard and you need to remember we love you. One evening in late November, with snow starting to fall and the cabin warm from the fire Noah had built, Evelyn's phone rang. Patricia. I'm sending you something, Patricia said without preamble. Check your email. Evelyn put her on speaker and opened her laptop. The email contained a single document, a proposal for restructuring her role at the company. Instead of CEO, she'd become chair of the board, with someone else handling day-to-day operations. She'd be involved in major decisions, but not responsible for the minute-by-minute management that required her constant attention. I didn't ask for this, Evelyn said slowly. I know, but I've been watching you for the last 2 months, and you're happier than I've ever seen you. You're also exhausted from trying to do 2 full-time jobs. This would give you the flexibility to actually live in Montana instead of just surviving there between video calls. Patricia, the board is open to it. Your father is less opposed than he was. And I've already found 3 excellent candidates to take over as CEO. This could work, Evelyn, if you want it to. Evelyn looked at Noah and Mia, who were building a puzzle on the coffee table, their heads bent together over the pieces. She looked at the life they'd created, messy and imperfect and absolutely worth fighting for. Send me the details, she said. I want to see the full proposal. After she hung up, Noah asked quietly, What are you thinking? I'm thinking, Evelyn said slowly, that maybe I've been trying to keep one foot in each world instead of committing fully to either. And maybe it's time to actually commit. To Montana? To us. To this family. To building something that's mine, ours, instead of fulfilling someone else's vision of what my life should look like. She closed the laptop. I'm scared to let go of the company completely. It's been my identity for so long. But I'm more scared of losing this because I was too afraid to choose it. Mia looked up from the puzzle. Are you staying forever now? Like, for real forever? Yeah, baby, Evelyn said, the words feeling right and true and terrifying. For real forever. Mia launched herself at Evelyn, nearly knocking her off the couch with the force of her hug. Noah pulled them both close, and they sat there in a tangle of arms and laughter and joy. Outside, snow continued to fall, covering the world in white. Inside the cabin, three people who'd found each other in the most unlikely way held on to each other and the future they were building one day at a time. It wasn't the life Evelyn had planned. It wasn't the life anyone would have predicted for her. But it was hers, chosen and fought for, and absolutely worth every risk she'd taken to get here. And that, she thought, as she kissed Noah and listened to Mia chatter about building a snowman tomorrow, was the only thing that really mattered. Winter arrived in earnest the week after Thanksgiving, transforming the Montana landscape into something from a snow globe. Evelyn woke one morning to find the world outside blanketed in white, the pine trees heavy with snow, the silence so complete it felt like the earth was holding its breath. She lay in Noah's bed, their bed now, watching him sleep, his face peaceful in the early morning light. 3 months ago, she'd been preparing to marry a man who'd laughed at her when he thought she was poor. Now she was here, in a cabin in the woods, in love with a man who'd stopped for a stranger and changed both their lives. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. A text from Patricia. Board meeting today at 2 p.m. They want your decision on the restructuring proposal. No pressure, but 20 people are waiting to hear if you're stepping down or staying on. Evelyn had been avoiding this decision for 2 weeks, weighing every angle, considering every consequence. Stepping back from the CEO role meant admitting her father had been partly right, that she couldn't have both lives fully. But staying on meant sacrificing the peace she'd found here, the family she was building, the person she was becoming. Noah stirred beside her, his eyes opening slowly. You're thinking too loud, he murmured, pulling her closer. I can hear your brain working from here. Sorry. Big meeting today. The board wants my answer. And what are you going to tell them? I don't know yet. She traced patterns on his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart. What if I'm making a mistake? What if I step back and regret it? Then you'll deal with it. But Evelyn, I've watched you for 3 months now. You light up when you're helping Mia with homework or learning to make furniture. You look exhausted and stressed after every board call. Your body's already telling you what you want. You just have to be brave enough to listen. Before Evelyn could respond, Mia burst through the door without knocking, already dressed for school and vibrating with excitement. It snowed, like really snowed. Can we build a snowman after school, a huge one? And can we go sledding this weekend? Zoe said there's a great hill by her house and... She stopped, registering that they were still in bed. Oh, sorry. Should I have knocked? Yes, Noah said, but he was smiling. What's the rule about closed doors? Knock first, wait for permission. I forgot because snow. Mia bounced on her toes. But seriously, snowman after school? If Evie doesn't have work, Noah said, glancing at Evelyn. I'll make time, Evelyn promised. Snow doesn't wait for meetings. After Mia thundered back downstairs, Noah kissed Evelyn's forehead. See, you're already choosing. You just haven't made it official yet. The morning passed in the usual controlled chaos. Mia had a spelling test she'd forgotten to study for, requiring a frantic review over breakfast. Noah discovered a crack in one of his furniture pieces and had to restructure his whole day to fix it. Evelyn spilled coffee on her shirt and had to change, making her late for her first call. It was messy and imperfect and exactly what she wanted. At 2 o'clock, Evelyn sat in the small office with the door closed, her laptop open to the video conference that would determine her future. The board members appeared one by one on screen, serious faces and expensive suits, sitting in conference rooms that felt like a different universe from her cabin in Montana. Her father was there too, his expression carefully neutral. They hadn't spoken much since their last conversation, communicating mostly through Patricia and terse emails. But he was there, which meant something. Evelyn, the board chair began, We've reviewed Patricia's proposal for restructuring your role. Before we discuss it, we'd like to hear from you. What do you want? It was a deceptively simple question. What did she want? Evelyn looked around the small office, at the photos of Mia she'd hung on the wall, at the geode on the desk, at the window that showed pine trees and snow instead of skyscrapers. She thought about this morning, about the chaos and laughter, and the way Mia had burst in without knocking. She thought about Noah in his workshop, creating beautiful things with his hands. She thought about the life she was building, piece by piece, day by day. I want to step back, she said clearly. I want to transition to chair of the board and focus on strategic direction rather than day-to-day operations. I want to live in Montana full-time and be present for my family. I want to be involved with the company. It's my legacy, and I care about it deeply, but I don't want it to be my entire life anymore. Silence. Then one of the board members asked, "And you believe you can fulfill your fiduciary duties from Montana?" "I've been doing it for 3 months. The company is thriving. My team is excellent. And frankly, some of my best strategic thinking happens when I'm not buried in operational details. I think this could actually make me more effective, not less." "Your father has concerns," the board chair said, glancing at Charles Grace. Everyone looked at her father, who'd been silent throughout. He cleared his throat, and Evelyn braced herself for the criticism she knew was coming. "My daughter is the most capable person I know," Charles said, surprising her. "She built this company into something even better than I left it. If she says she can do this role from Montana, I believe her." He paused, and something in his expression softened. "And I've been doing some thinking about what your mother would say if she were here. She'd tell me to stop being a stubborn old fool and support my daughter's happiness." Evelyn felt tears prick her eyes. "Dad, I don't understand your choices," he continued. "I probably never will. But you're my daughter, and if living in Montana with a carpenter and his child is what makes you happy, then I'll accept it. I may not like it, but I'll accept it." It wasn't a ringing endorsement, but it was more than Evelyn had expected, more than she'd hoped for. The board discussed details for another hour: transition plans, reporting structures, salary adjustments. Evelyn answered their questions with confidence born from 3 months of proving she could handle both roles. By the time the meeting ended, it was official. She was stepping back from CEO to become chair of the board, effective January 1st. When she closed the laptop, Evelyn sat in the quiet office feeling lighter than she had in years. She'd done it. She'd chosen the life she wanted instead of the one everyone expected. And the sky hadn't fallen. The company would survive. Her father would adjust. Everything would be okay. A knock on the door. Noah peeked in. "How'd it go?" "I'm officially stepping back, chair of the board starting in January." He crossed the room in 3 strides and pulled her into a hug that lifted her off her feet. "I'm proud of you. That took guts." "I'm terrified," Evelyn admitted into his shoulder. "What if I just made the biggest mistake of my life? Then we'll figure it out together." "But I don't think you did. I think you just made the bravest decision of your life." They stood there holding each other until Mia's school bus rumbled past, and then they went out together to meet her, ready to build the promised snowman. The snowman turned into 2 snowmen, then a whole snow family, complete with a snow dog that Mia insisted they needed, even though they didn't have a real dog. They used carrots for noses and stones for eyes, and Mia's old scarves for decoration. By the time they finished, all 3 of them were covered in snow and laughing so hard they couldn't breathe. "This is the best day," Mia declared, admiring their work. "Can every day be like this?" "Not every day," Noah said, "but some days, the good days." That night, after Mia had fallen asleep exhausted from playing in the snow, Noah and Evelyn sat by the fire with mugs of hot chocolate, watching the flames dance. "I have something for you," Noah said, setting down his mug. He looked nervous, his hands fidgeting in a way that was completely unlike him. "I've been working on it for a while, waiting for the right time. And I figure if you're brave enough to restructure your whole life, I should be brave enough to do this." He pulled a small box from his pocket, not a ring box, something different, and opened it to reveal a key. Not just any key, but one carved from wood with intricate detail work, hanging on a leather cord. "It's symbolic," Noah said quickly. "Obviously, it doesn't actually unlock anything, but I made it from the cedar in the workshop, and I wanted—" He stopped, started over. Evelyn Grace, I love you. I love your courage and your stubbornness and the way you're learning to let yourself be happy. I love how you are with Mia, how patient you are when she asks a million questions. I love that you left a whole empire to build a life here with us. Evelyn's heart was pounding so hard she could barely breathe. I'm not asking you to marry me, Noah continued. Not yet. I want to do that properly, with Mia involved, and a real ring and everything. But I'm asking you to let this be your home, really your home, not just the place you're staying. I'm asking you to commit to this life, to this family, knowing it won't always be easy, but believing it will always be worth it. Yes, Evelyn said, her voice breaking. Yes to all of it. This is already my home. You and Mia are already my family. I don't need a ceremony to know that. He fastened the wooden key around her neck, his hands gentle. When I'm ready to propose, really propose, you'll know. But this is a promise, that there's always a place for you here, that you always have a home with us. They kissed by firelight, and Evelyn felt every piece of her life click into place. This was where she belonged, not in boardrooms or penthouses, but here, in a cabin in Montana, with a man who made her wooden keys and a girl who gave her rocks to remember she was loved. December brought more snow and the kind of cold that made the air hurt, but also a magic that Evelyn had never experienced in the city. They cut down a Christmas tree from Noah's property, Mia's choice, a slightly crooked pine that she declared was perfect because it had personality. They strung popcorn and cranberries because Mia wanted to do it the old-fashioned way like in books. They baked cookies that didn't turn out quite right but tasted delicious anyway. Evelyn flew to Denver twice for board meetings, but each time she couldn't wait to get back to Montana, to the cabin that was starting to feel more like home than anywhere she'd ever lived. Patricia sent care packages, expensive coffee, and her favorite chocolates, with notes that said things like "surviving without you, barely," and "the new CEO is competent but boring." A week before Christmas, Mia asked if they could visit Sarah's grave. It was the first time she'd mentioned her mother directly in weeks, and Noah looked uncertain, like he wasn't sure if this was healthy or concerning. I want to tell her about Evie, Mia explained. I think she'd want to know that we're okay now, that we're happy. So they went to the small cemetery on the edge of town, where Sarah Bennett's headstone sat under a pine tree she'd apparently loved. Evelyn hung back, giving Noah and Mia space, but Mia waved her over. You should be here too. You're family now. They stood together in front of the grave, and Mia talked to her mother the way she talked to everyone, openly, honestly, with that uncomplicated directness that made Evelyn love her more every day. Mom, this is Evie. She's Dad's girlfriend, and she lives with us now, and I really like her. She's not trying to replace you because nobody could replace you, but she makes Dad smile again, and she helps me with homework, and she's teaching me about business stuff, which is pretty cool. Mia paused. I think you'd like her. She's kind, and she was really brave to leave her fancy life to be with us. That's the kind of brave I want to be when I grow up. Noah's arm came around Evelyn's shoulders, and she felt tears running down her face. They stood there for a long time in the cold, the three of them together, honoring the woman who'd come before while making space for the future they were building. On Christmas Eve, Evelyn's father called. She almost didn't answer. They'd been texting but not really talking. But something made her pick up. Evelyn, he said, his voice gruff, I wanted to wish you a Merry Christmas and to tell you something. Okay? I've been thinking about what you said, about your mother wanting you to be brave, to choose your own life. And I realized I've been angry at you for doing exactly what I always taught you to do, making hard decisions and standing by them. That's not fair. Evelyn sat down, shocked. Her father never apologized, never admitted fault, never showed this kind of vulnerability. I don't understand your choices, he continued, living in Montana, dating a furniture maker, stepping back from the company. None of it makes sense to me, but I can see that you're happy. Your assistant tells me you smile during video calls now. You didn't used to do that. Dad, let me finish. I'm not good at this kind of thing, so I need to say it all at once. He took a breath. I'm proud of you for having the courage to build the life you want instead of the life I wanted for you. And I'd like to meet him. This Noah Bennett and his daughter. Not to judge or criticize, but because they're important to you, which makes them important to me. Evelyn was crying now, couldn't stop the tears even if she wanted to. You mean that? I do. I'm thinking I could come visit after the holidays, if that would be all right. I'd like to see this place that made you brave enough to disappoint me. You could come for New Year's, Evelyn said. We're not doing anything fancy, but you'd be welcome. After they hung up, Noah found her on the porch, wrapped in a blanket, staring at the stars. Everything okay? He asked. My father wants to visit, to meet you and Mia. Noah was quiet for a moment. How do you feel about that? Terrified, but good. Like maybe all the pieces of my life can actually fit together after all. She looked at him. Are you okay with it? Having him here? If you want him here, then I want him here. Though, fair warning, if he's rude to you or Mia, I will ask him to leave. I don't care how rich or powerful he is. Evelyn laughed through her tears. Deal. Christmas morning was chaos and magic in equal measure. Mia woke them at 6, too excited to sleep, dragging them downstairs to see what Santa had brought. The gifts were modest compared to what Evelyn was used to. Books and art supplies and a new rock collection display case Noah had built. But Mia acted like every present was treasure. Evelyn gave Mia a telescope she'd ordered secretly, perfect for stargazing and satisfying her curiosity about space. She gave Noah a set of Japanese chisels she'd found online, the kind real craftsmen used. Both of them looked at her like she'd given them the moon. But the best gift was the one Mia gave her, a photo album she'd made herself, full of pictures from the last 3 months. Evelyn at the kitchen table helping with homework. Evelyn covered in sawdust from the workshop. Evelyn and Noah on the porch. Evelyn and Mia at the creek. Every photo was labeled in Mia's careful handwriting. Our family. I wanted you to have proof, Mia explained, that you belong here, that we're yours and you're ours. Evelyn couldn't speak, could only pull Mia into a hug and hold on while she cried happy tears. They spent Christmas Day exactly as they'd spent every other day, making food together, laughing at jokes that weren't funny, sitting by the fire while snow fell outside. It was simple and perfect, and everything Evelyn hadn't known she needed. That night, after Mia had finally crashed from her sugar high, Noah took Evelyn's hand and led her out to the workshop. He'd set up 2 chairs facing his current project, the dining table he'd been working on for months, now finished and gleaming with fresh polyurethane. I wanted to show you something, he said, pulling out a folder. These are commission requests I've gotten in the last 2 months. More work than I can handle alone, actually, and I was thinking... He paused, looking nervous. What if we expanded? Hired an apprentice, maybe 2. Turned this into a real business instead of just me in a garage. Noah, that's wonderful. But what does that have to do with me? I want you to be my business partner. Not just my partner in life, but in work, too. You know business, I know furniture. Together we could build something real, something ours. He pulled out more papers, sketches, plans, projections. I've been thinking about this for weeks. We could call it Bennett and Grace Furniture, or Grace and Bennett, or something completely different. But the point is, we'd be building it together. Evelyn looked at the plans, at the care and thought he'd put into this, at the future he was offering her. You really want to do this? Be business partners? I want to build a life with you in every way possible. And I know you need more than just helping Mia with homework and learning to cook. You need a challenge, something to sink your teeth into. This could be that thing, if you want it. I want it, Evelyn said immediately. I absolutely want it. They spent the next hour going over his plans, Evelyn's business mind already seeing opportunities and solutions and ways to grow the vision he'd started. They talked about hiring and marketing and pricing, and it felt right in a way her work at her family's company never had. This was theirs, built from nothing, together. New Year's Eve arrived, and with it, Charles Grace. He showed up in a rental car looking completely out of place in his expensive suit and designer shoes, staring at the cabin like he couldn't quite believe his daughter lived there. Mia answered the door, unintimidated by this stern-looking stranger. You must be Evie's dad. I'm Mia. Come in. It's cold. Charles blinked at her, clearly not used to 9-year-olds who treated him like a regular person. Thank you, Mia. It's nice to meet you. Noah emerged from the workshop, wiping sawdust off his hands, and extended one to Charles. Mr. Grace, welcome. Evelyn's told us a lot about you. They shook hands, the carpenter and the billionaire, two men from completely different worlds, both loving the same woman and trying to figure out how to coexist. The weekend was awkward at first. Charles didn't know how to exist in a space where he wasn't in charge, where his opinion didn't automatically carry weight. He watched Evelyn help cook dinner like he was seeing a stranger, watched her laugh at Mia's jokes, watched her fit into this life like she'd been born to it. But slowly, things shifted. Mia showed him her rock collection, explaining each one with her characteristic enthusiasm, and Charles listened with what looked like genuine interest. Noah gave him a tour of the workshop, and they found common ground discussing business challenges and growth strategies. And at dinner on New Year's Day, something happened that surprised everyone. "I owe you all an apology," Charles said, setting down his fork. "Particularly you, Noah. I came here with judgments about your work, your life, your worthiness to be with my daughter. But I've watched you with her, and I've watched her with you, and I can see what I was too stubborn to see before. You make her happy, you and Mia both, and that's all that really matters." "Thank you," Noah said carefully. "That means a lot. Evelyn tells me you're starting a furniture business together. I'd like to invest if you're open to it, not to control anything or have a say in operations, just to help get it off the ground." Noah and Evelyn exchanged glances. "We'll think about it," Evelyn said. "But Dad, if we do accept investment, it's under our terms. This is our project." "I wouldn't expect anything less." Charles smiled, and it transformed his face into something almost warm. "You're so much like your mother. She was stubborn, too. Knew her own mind. It drove me crazy sometimes, but I loved her for it." After Charles left, with promises to visit again, with an actual hug for Evelyn, the cabin felt quiet. Mia was upstairs reading, leaving Noah and Evelyn alone in the living room. "Your father's not so bad," Noah said, "once you get past the terrifying exterior. He liked you, I could tell. He loves you, that's what I could tell." Noah pulled Evelyn close. "And speaking of love, Noah Bennett, if you're about to propose to me right now, I'm going to need a minute to prepare emotionally." He laughed. "Not quite yet, but soon. I'm thinking—" He paused, considering. "I'm thinking spring, when everything's growing and new, when we've had a full winter together and you know what you're signing up for. Does that sound okay?" "That sounds perfect." They sat by the fire, planning a future that felt real and attainable and absolutely worth fighting for. Outside, snow continued to fall, blanketing the world in white. Inside, the cabin was warm with firelight and love, and the kind of peace that came from finally being exactly where you were supposed to be. January brought cold so severe that the pipes froze twice, and Evelyn learned how to thaw them with a hairdryer. February brought ice storms and power outages and long nights by candlelight. March brought the first hints of thaw, mud season as Montana locals called it, when everything was wet and messy and somehow beautiful anyway. Through it all, they built their life together. Bennett and Grace Furniture officially launched in February, with their first commissioned piece, a bed frame for a couple in Seattle, selling for more than Noah used to make in a month. They hired their first apprentice in March, a young woman named Sarah, Noah's choice of name, and it felt right, who was eager to learn and had real talent. Evelyn settled into her new role as board chair, finding she actually enjoyed the strategic thinking without the operational stress. She flew to Denver once a month for in-person meetings, and each time she was more eager to get back to Montana, to the life that felt like hers. Mia thrived with the increased attention from both of them. Her grades improved. She joined the school science club. She started drawing more, filling sketchbooks with designs for furniture pieces and rock formations and the world as she saw it. And through it all, Noah and Evelyn grew closer. They had their first real fight in March, about money and boundaries and her tendency to try to solve everything with her checkbook. They worked through it, learned from it, came out stronger. They learned each other's patterns, their needs, their triggers. They learned how to be partners in every sense of the word. Spring arrived slowly, tentatively, like the earth was afraid to commit after such a harsh winter. But by April, green was pushing through brown, flowers were budding, and the world felt full of possibility. On a Sunday morning in late April, Noah woke Evelyn early. "Get dressed, we're going somewhere." "Where?" "It's a surprise, trust me." They drove into the mountains, higher than they'd gone before, until they reached a meadow that overlooked miles of Montana wilderness. The sun was just rising, painting everything gold and pink, and wildflowers were starting to bloom in patches of color. Mia was already there, waiting with a blanket and a basket. Finally! Dad said you'd sleep forever, but I bet him you'd wake up fast. What's going on? Evelyn asked, but her heart was already pounding because she knew what this was. Noah took her hand and led her to the center of the meadow, where someone had placed stones in a circle. Inside the circle, someone had carved words into the earth. Will you marry us? Us? Evelyn looked at Mia, who was bouncing with excitement. We talked about it, Mia said. Dad asked if I wanted him to propose or if I wanted us to propose, and I said us because you're marrying both of us, right? You're going to be my stepmom and Dad's wife, so we should both ask. Noah knelt down, pulling a ring box from his pocket. Inside was a simple band with 3 stones, amethyst, green tourmaline, and diamond. Our birthstones, he explained, the 3 of us together. Evelyn Grace, he said, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes, will you marry me? Will you be my wife, my partner, my person for the rest of our lives? And will you be my stepmom? Mia added. Will you help me with homework and look at rocks and teach me about business and love me even when I'm annoying? Evelyn was crying, laughing, could barely see through her tears. Yes, yes to all of it, to both of you, always. Noah slipped the ring on her finger, and Mia threw her arms around both of them, and the 3 of them stood in that meadow holding each other while the sun rose over the mountains and the world came alive around them. They had breakfast in the meadow, pastries Mia had helped make, coffee from a thermos, orange juice that was mostly pulp because Mia had insisted on squeezing it herself. They talked about wedding plans, about how they do it here in this meadow in the summer, something small and simple with just the people who mattered. Can I help plan it? Mia asked. I have ideas. I would love your help, Evelyn said. We'll plan it together, all 3 of us. On the drive home, with Mia asleep in the back seat and Noah's hand in hers, Evelyn looked at the ring on her finger. 3 stones, 3 lives, 3 people choosing each other, and felt something settle in her soul. This was it. This was the life she'd been running toward without knowing it existed. She'd started this journey in a torn wedding dress, running from a man who didn't love her, testing people to see if anyone would see her real value. She'd lied and hurt people and almost destroyed the best thing that ever happened to her. But she'd also been brave. She'd told the truth when it was hard. She'd chosen love over comfort, authenticity over expectations, a real life over a perfect one. And now, driving down a Montana back road with her fiancé and soon-to-be stepdaughter, Evelyn Grace, who would soon be Evelyn Bennett, felt something she'd never felt before. She felt home. The wedding took place in August, in the same meadow where Noah had proposed. It was small, just 30 people, mostly Mia's friends and their parents, a few of Noah's clients who'd become friends, Patricia, who flew in from Denver, and Charles Grace, who walked his daughter down a makeshift aisle with tears in his eyes. Mia was the flower girl and maid of honor, wearing a dress she'd picked out herself and the geode necklace Evelyn had given her. She took her role very seriously, carrying the rings and standing beside them during the ceremony like she belonged there, which she did. Evelyn wore a simple dress, nothing like the elaborate gown from her first attempted wedding. Noah wore a suit he'd bought for the occasion, but he'd kept his work boots on because Mia insisted they were more him than dress shoes. They wrote their own vows. Noah promised to build Evelyn a life worth living, to challenge her and support her, and never let her forget her worth. Evelyn promised to choose him every day, to be brave enough to be real, to love Mia like her own. And Mia, unprompted, added her own vows. I promise to tell you when you're being mushy so you don't embarrass me in front of my friends. And I promise to share my rock collection with you forever. And I promise to love you both even when you're old and boring. Everyone laughed, and Evelyn pulled Mia into the vows, the 3 of them holding hands while the officiant pronounced them a family. The reception was casual, a potluck dinner, dancing to music from someone's phone, toasts that were funny and sweet and occasionally inappropriate. Charles Grace gave a speech about his daughter's courage, about how proud he was of the woman she'd become. Patricia told embarrassing stories about Evelyn's early days at the company, and Mia's friend Zoe declared it was the best wedding ever because there was no boring stuff, just the good parts. As the sun set over the mountains and fairy lights came on in the trees, Noah pulled Evelyn onto the makeshift dance floor. "Happy?" he asked. "Happier than I knew was possible," she said honestly. "Thank you for stopping that day, for seeing something worth saving in a stranger in a torn dress. Thank you for being brave enough to come back, for choosing this life even when it was scary." They danced under the stars with their family and friends around them, and Evelyn thought about the journey that had brought her here. From the road where Noah had found her, through the lies and revelations, through winter and spring and into summer, every step had led to this moment, to this man, to this family. She'd given up a fortune to live in a cabin. She'd walked away from power to build furniture. She'd traded perfection for authenticity, comfort for courage, expectations for love, and she'd do it all again in a heartbeat. Later that night, after the guests had left and Mia had fallen asleep in the truck on the way home, Noah and Evelyn sat on their porch now, officially, legally, permanently, and looked at the stars. "I have something for you," Evelyn said, pulling out a small wrapped package. "A wedding gift." Inside was a deed, not to property, but to something else. "I paid off your mortgage," she explained as Noah stared at the papers. "The cabin is yours, free and clear. I wanted you to know that no matter what happens with the business or the company or anything else, you and Mia will always have this place. It's yours." Noah was quiet for a long time, looking at the papers. When he finally spoke, his voice was thick with emotion. "You didn't have to do that." "I know, but I wanted to. You gave me a home when I needed one. Let me give you the security of knowing it's always here." He pulled her close, and they sat wrapped in each other, listening to the night sounds of Montana, owls and wind, and the distant howl of a coyote. "I love you," Noah said. "Not for what you can give me, but for who you are. I need you to know that." "I do know that. That's why I married you." They went inside to check on Mia, who'd woken up enough to change into pajamas but had fallen asleep with her clothes scattered around the room and her new rock collection already taking over every surface. They stood in her doorway watching her sleep, this amazing kid who'd accepted Evelyn into her life with such open-hearted generosity. "We're going to be good at this," Evelyn whispered. "The three of us. We're going to be a really good family." "We already are," Noah said. In bed that night, their first night as a married couple, Evelyn traced the wooden key Noah had given her months ago, still hanging around her neck. She'd added her wedding ring to it, wearing both symbols of home together, always. She thought about the woman she'd been a year ago, preparing to marry the wrong man, testing people, hiding behind lies and wheelchairs and walls she'd built to protect herself. That woman seemed like a stranger now, someone she used to know but no longer was. She'd become someone new, someone braver, someone who chose love over fear, authenticity over perfection, a real life over a safe one. And as she drifted off to sleep in her husband's arms, in the cabin that was now their home, with their daughter sleeping down the hall, Evelyn felt something she'd been searching for her entire life without knowing it. She felt complete. The story could have ended there, in that perfect moment. But life isn't made of perfect moments. It's made of all the moments strung together. The hard ones and the easy ones, the boring ones and the magical ones. Bennett and Grace Furniture grew over the next year, expanding into a real business with 3 employees and a waiting list of clients. Evelyn discovered she loved the challenge of building something from scratch, of solving problems that had nothing to do with quarterly reports and everything to do with creativity and craftsmanship. Mia started middle school, which brought its own challenges. Friendship drama and difficult teachers and the general awfulness of being 11. But she had 2 parents to help her through it now. 2 people who loved her and supported her and showed up to every science fair and parent-teacher conference. Charles Grace visited 4 times that first year, each visit easier than the last. He taught Mia about investing and business strategy. He and Noah developed a grudging respect that turned into actual friendship. He learned to love his daughter's choices even when he didn't fully understand them. And Evelyn and Noah built their marriage day by day, choosing each other through arguments about whose turn it was to do dishes and whose fault it was they'd run out of coffee. They chose each other through sickness and health, through business challenges and family drama, through all the ordinary moments that make up a life. On their first anniversary, they went back to the meadow where they'd gotten married. Just the two of them this time, with Mia staying overnight at Zoe's house for the first time. "Do you regret it?" Noah asked as they sat in the wildflowers, watching the sunset. "Giving up everything you had?" Evelyn thought about it seriously, taking his question as the genuine inquiry it was. "I didn't give up everything. I gained more than I lost. But sometimes," she paused, wanting to be honest, "sometimes I miss certain things. Good restaurants, easy access to museums, not having to drive an hour to get to Target." "So you do regret it?" "No, I miss those things the way you miss a friend who moved away, fondly, without wishing they'd come back, because what I have here is worth more than any of that." She looked at him. "I have you. I have Mia. I have work that challenges me and a life that feels real. I have a family I chose instead of one I inherited. That's worth every sacrifice." "Even when the pipes freeze?" "Even when the pipes freeze," she laughed, "though I reserve the right to complain loudly when they do." "Deal." He pulled her close. "Thank you for choosing this, for choosing us, for being brave enough to build a life that doesn't look like anyone expected but feels exactly right. Thank you for stopping for a stranger in a torn dress, for seeing something worth saving." "I didn't save you," Noah said seriously. "You saved yourself. I just gave you a place to land while you figured out who you wanted to be." They watched the sun set over the mountains, and Evelyn thought about salvation and courage and the different ways people save each other. Noah had saved her by offering kindness when she needed it most, but she'd saved herself by being brave enough to accept that kindness, to be honest about her lies, to choose a different path. And in the end, they'd saved each other, because that's what love does. It gives you a safe place to be your real self, mistakes and all. Years would pass. Mia would grow up and go to college and come back to Montana with a geology degree and big plans for the family business. Bennett and Grace Furniture would become known across the country for beautiful, handmade pieces that lasted generations. Evelyn would eventually step away from her family's company entirely, finding more satisfaction in building furniture and raising her family than in boardrooms and profit margins. But that was all in the future. In this moment, in this meadow, on their anniversary, Noah and Evelyn were just two people who'd found each other in the most unlikely way and chosen to build a life together. A single dad who'd saved a runaway bride. A billionaire who'd saved herself. A 9-year-old who'd saved them both by being brave enough to love without reservation. 3 people who became a family, not through blood or obligation, but through choice and courage and love. And in the end, that was the only thing that mattered. They drove home as stars came out over the mountains, back to their cabin where a light was on. Mia must have convinced Zoe's parents to bring her home early, unable to stay away from her family even for one night. They'd complain about her breaking the rules, but they'd be secretly pleased, because home was wherever the 3 of them were together. Evelyn looked at the wooden key around her neck, at the ring on her finger, at the man beside her who'd become her whole world. She thought about hope, the word carved in cedar, the thing that had brought her here, the thing that kept her choosing love every single day. She'd come to Montana broken and lost. She'd stayed and become whole. And that, she thought as they pulled into the driveway where Mia was waiting on the porch with a smile and a new rock to show them, was the best kind of happy ending. Not perfect, not easy, but real and earned and absolutely worth every risk it took to get here. Home.